There are moments in life when the noise outside becomes quieter than the storm inside. When the lights are off, the world goes silent. And yet, your thoughts remain loud. You lie in bed with tired eyes and a restless heart, hoping sleep will come. But it doesn't. Not because your body refuses to rest, but because your soul hasn't found its stillness. You may not know exactly what's bothering you. Maybe it's not one thing, but 100 little things that have collected in your chest. Words left unsaid, emotions unprocessed, responsibilities that never seem to end. Or maybe it's just the quiet realization that no matter how much you try, there are things you cannot change, people you can't hold on to, outcomes you cannot predict. There's a kind of helplessness in that realizing you're not in control. And yet, there is also freedom. We live in a world that praises effort, achievement, and control. We're taught that if we try hard enough, plan carefully enough, stay strong enough, we can shape our destiny. But what happens when life doesn't listen? When someone walks away despite our love? When the future refuses to match our hopes? What then? In those moments, fear often arises. Not just fear of the unknown, but fear of feeling powerless, of being vulnerable, of not being able to fix what's broken. But what if you didn't need to fix anything tonight? What if you didn't have to fight your feelings, understand them, or solve them? What if this moment wasn't asking you to be strong, but to be still? This video is not here to give you answers. It's not here to fix you, because you're not broken. It's simply a soft place to land, a space where you can let go, just for a while, a voice that reminds you it's okay to pause, to breathe, to feel. You don't have to hold the world together tonight. You don't have to carry every weight, explain every emotion, or control every outcome. You only have to be here, right here, with your breath, with your heart, with yourself. As you listen, let each word be a gentle companion, guiding you not to something new, but back to what you already are: peaceful, whole, and deeply human. What follows are not teachings, but invitations, not conclusions, but open doors, a slow unfolding of truths that don't demand belief, only presence. May you enter this space not with urgency, but with softness, not to change who you are, but to remember what you've always been. This is not the beginning of an answer. It's the beginning of a return. There are moments when life quietly slips from your grip. No loud crashes, no sudden explosions, just the slow, almost imperceptible unraveling of things you thought were held together. A plan falls through. A person changes. A door you worked so hard to open slowly closes without warning. At first, you tell yourself, it's nothing, just a little bump. But then comes another shift, and another. Eventually, you realize that the more you try to hold on, the more things slip through your fingers like grains of sand. And in that helpless realization. Anxiety begins to bloom. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just a tightness in your chest when you wake up, a sudden wave of unease while you're doing the dishes, the subtle dread when your phone rings, or when you check your messages and there's no reply. It creeps in quietly, but it lingers. It makes you question whether you're doing enough, whether you are enough. This feeling of being out of control is one of the deepest discomforts we experience as human beings, because from a very young age, we're taught to manage, plan, and protect. We're told that if we work hard, we can steer life the way we want. And for a while, maybe it seems to work, until it doesn't. The truth is, life doesn't operate on certainty. It ebbs and flows like the tide. And while we may be able to influence it, we were never meant to command it. But when we forget that, we suffer. Not because life is cruel, but because we're trying to make something predictable that was never meant to be. I once met a woman named Elina. She was a project manager, precise, reliable, always ahead of schedule. Control keeps me calm, she told me. Her calendar was color-coded. Her meals were prepped a week in advance. Even her vacations were tightly planned. But then life changed. Her job was downsized. Her partner grew distant. Her father got sick. It felt like the ground beneath me dissolved. She said, like no matter how much I prepared, everything was falling apart. And the more she tried to fix things, the more they slipped away. I stayed up late searching for solutions. I blamed myself for not seeing it coming. I tried to hold on tighter, but that only made me more anxious. I couldn't breathe. What Elina was experiencing wasn't failure. It was grief. Grief over losing the illusion of control. And it's a grief many of us carry, quietly and alone. But here's the deeper truth. Feeling out of control doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. And maybe it's an invitation, not to push harder, but to soften. Because what if the answer isn't in holding on, but in letting go? Imagine standing in the middle of a river, arms outstretched, trying to stop the current. You might hold back a few leaves, a twig or two, but the water will always find its way. No matter how strong your arms, no matter how deep your determination, the river flows on. That's how life is. And trying to dam it with your bare hands only exhausts you. But what happens if, instead, you let your arms fall to your sides, you stand still, and let the water move around you? You breathe. You stop resisting. You're still in the river, but you're no longer drowning in it. This doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean becoming passive or careless. Letting go is not the absence of effort. It's the absence of attachment. The release of the belief that your worth depends on outcomes, or that peace can only exist if things go your way. You can still care deeply, try fully, and love boldly, while also allowing life to unfold in its own rhythm. You can take action, while accepting that you cannot control everything. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. Of course, this isn't easy, especially if you've been taught that being in control is how you stay safe. That uncertainty is dangerous. That surrender equals failure. But surrender, in the spiritual sense, is something entirely different. It's not defeat. It's alignment. It's saying, I will walk this path with intention, but I will not cling to every turn. I will show up, but I will not grasp. There is peace in this kind of surrender, a softness that allows you to breathe again. Elina eventually found that peace, not overnight, but slowly. She started small, acknowledging when she was trying to control things she couldn't. She practiced pausing instead of reacting. She spent time in silence, allowing her feelings to rise without judgment. One evening, after weeks of inner work, she told me, "I realized I was never in control, really, but I am in relationship with life. I can listen to it, respond to it, trust it, and somehow, that feels better than control ever did." Her words stayed with me, because they spoke to something ancient and wise that beneath the noise of trying to manage everything, there's a quiet invitation to trust the flow, to trust yourself. So if you're feeling unsettled tonight, if the weight of the unknown feels too heavy to carry, pause, close your eyes, place a hand over your heart, and breathe. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to force clarity. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is to stay right here, right now, with the discomfort, with the questions, with the not knowing. Because it's here, in the space between control and surrender, that your true strength begins to awaken. Not the strength of domination, but of presence. Not the power to manipulate outcomes, but the grace to be fully alive in whatever arises. You are not failing because things feel uncertain. You are simply waking up to a deeper truth. Life was never meant to be a machine you could control. It is a dance, a wave, a breath. And your only task is to stay open to its rhythm. So rest now, let the currents move as they will, and know that even in uncertainty, you are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be. Have you ever wondered why your mind becomes so uneasy when things don't go as planned? Why, even the smallest disruptions, a canceled appointment, a delayed response, an unexpected comment can ripple through your peace like a pebble tossed into still water. There's something deep within us that craves control. Not because we're selfish or overly ambitious, but because, somewhere along the way, we were taught that control equals safety, that if we plan enough, predict enough, perform well enough, then life will reward us with security, stability, and certainty. But life isn't a contract. It's a river. It doesn't follow our blueprints. It doesn't ask for our permission before it turns, twists, or floods. From a young age, many of us were conditioned to believe that approval, love, and safety were tied to things going right. A parent's silence when we made a mistake, a teacher's praise when we succeeded, society's applause when we followed the script. Over time, we internalized a dangerous formula. If I do it right, I'll be safe. If things go well, I'll be worthy. If people agree with me, I'll be loved. And so we began constructing expectations not just of others, but of ourselves, of life, of the future. The mind, brilliant as it is, became a master architect of shoulds. It built elaborate mental models. I should be further along. They should understand me. This should have happened by now. But what happens when reality doesn't match the blueprint? A gap forms a painful space between what is and what the mind insists should be. And in that gap, discomfort grows. Frustration, disappointment, anger, sadness. we rarely pause to notice it. But this internal tension is not caused by life itself. It's caused by the friction between life and the story we tell ourselves about how life should be. I remember a man named Liam who came to a meditation retreat feeling heavy with self-blame. "I've always been the one in control," he said. "My career, my family, everything followed a system. Until it didn't. My daughter dropped out of college. My company downsized. My health took a turn. I thought I failed because things stopped going the way I'd planned." But he hadn't failed. He had simply encountered what we all do, at some point, the limits of control. During our sessions, Liam started to see that his distress didn't come from the events themselves, but from his deep resistance to them. I kept asking why this was happening to me. He said, "I never asked if it could be happening for me." That's the trap of the controlling mind. It views life as a sequence of problems to fix, rather than a mystery to experience. It believes that peace is found in order, rather than in acceptance. But in truth, peace is not the result of perfect conditions. It's the result of releasing the need for them. This isn't to say we shouldn't dream, plan, or hope. But there's a difference between intentional living and rigid expectations. One is rooted in presence, the other in fear. Why does the mind hold on so tightly? Because it believes that if it lets go, everything will fall apart. But ironically, the tighter we grip, the more we suffer. Imagine holding a rope that's being pulled away. The tighter you squeeze, the more it burns. But if you loosen your grip, even slightly, the pain lessens. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about softening the edges. It's about saying, "I'll show up fully, but I won't tie my worth to the outcome." It's about trusting that even when things don't go your way, you are still okay. One of the mind's favorite illusions is the idea that it knows best, that it can predict, strategize, and outthink life. But the truth is, we rarely see the whole picture. What looks like a failure today might be the soil for tomorrow's growth. What feels like loss might be space for something truer to arrive. Have you ever looked back at a time when something didn't work out and felt grateful? A job you didn't get? A relationship that ended? A plan that fell through? At the time, it felt like the world was collapsing. But in hindsight, it became a turning point, a redirection, a blessing in disguise. The mind forgets that it's not the master, it's the mirror. Its role is to reflect the present, not to command the future. And yet, this conditioning runs deep. So how do we begin to shift? We begin by watching, by noticing when the mind demands that life conform, when it resists what is, when it clings to what was. Each moment of awareness becomes a doorway back to presence. You might hear your mind say, "This shouldn't be happening." Gently ask, "Why not? What if this too has something to teach me? What if I don't have to understand it to trust it?" You might feel the urge to control someone else's emotions, reactions, or choices. Pause. Remind yourself, they are on their own journey. My peace does not depend on their approval. You might catch yourself spiraling into what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Come back. Feel your breath. Feel your body. Feel this moment, the only place life is truly unfolding. In Buddhist teachings, clinging is one of the roots of suffering. Clinging to pleasure, clinging to permanence, clinging to control. But freedom lies in non-attachment, not in being indifferent, but in being free. There's a story I love about a monk and a teacup. The monk carries a fragile teacup and says, "I drink from it each day, knowing it is already broken." This is not pessimism, it's clarity. He knows everything. In life is impermanent. And because of that, he cherishes each sip. He doesn't waste time wishing it will last forever. He is fully present. Because he has let go of the illusion of control, we can do the same. With our plans, with our relationships, with our identities, we can hold them with care, but not with attachment. We can love without clinging, plan without rigid expectation, hope without demand. There is profound peace in this way of living. It doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it does become lighter, more fluid, more real. Liam, the man from the retreat, eventually said something that stayed with me. I realized I was trying to bend life to fit my map, but life isn't the one that needs adjusting. My map does. So, now, I invite you to look gently at your own maps. Where have you drawn hard lines where softness might serve you better? Where are you holding tight, thinking it keeps you safe? But in truth, it's keeping you from breathing. You don't have to erase your dreams, but you can let go of the pressure for them to unfold in a specific way. You don't have to stop caring, but you can stop tying your joy to outcomes. The mind will continue to speak. It will continue to plan, anticipate, react. That's its nature. But you don't have to obey every word. You can watch it like clouds passing through the sky. Some dark, some light, but none of them lasting. None of them defining who you are. What defines you is your ability to return to stillness, to breath, to awareness. So next time your mind insists that things must go a certain way, smile gently, thank it for trying to protect you, and then, softly, come back to the truth. You are safe in this moment. Even if life is uncertain, you are whole. Even if plans fall through, you are free. Even if the path twists. This is the power of surrender, not as a collapse, but as a conscious choice to release what you can't control, to embrace what is, and to trust that the unfolding of life, even when mysterious, is not against you. It is simply taking you where you're meant to go. It's often said that the greatest battles we fight are the ones within ourselves, and at the center of those inner battles, quietly shaping our decisions, our reactions, our fears is the ego, not the loud, arrogant ego we often hear about, not the one that boasts or demands recognition. The ego we'll talk about here is more subtle, more hidden. It wears many faces: concern, responsibility, ambition, even love. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It convinces us it's protecting us, but often, it's simply afraid. The ego is the part of us that wants to be in control, not just of situations, but of how we are seen, how we are understood, and how life unfolds. It feeds on predictability. It clings to stories about who we are and what should happen next. And when those stories are challenged, when someone misunderstands us, when plans fall apart, when life takes a different path than expected, the ego flares up, not always in anger, sometimes in silence, sometimes in anxiety, sometimes in the quiet ache of disappointment, you may recognize its voice. It says things like, "They shouldn't have said that," or "I should be further by now," or "If I let go, everything will fall apart." It disguises itself as truth, when really is a fragile identity trying to survive. A woman named Celeste once came to me during a retreat. She was gentle, thoughtful, always offering help to others. But inside, she was struggling. "I don't know why I get so upset when things don't go as planned," she confessed. "Even small things like my partner loading the dishwasher differently. It sounds silly, but it makes me feel out of control." What we uncovered together was not about dishes or routines. It was about identity. Celeste had built her sense of safety around being organized, dependable, in charge. Any shift, no matter how minor, was a threat to that identity. The ego doesn't measure the size of an event. It only reacts to the threat it perceives. And it reacts not just outwardly, but inwardly. When we make a mistake, the ego doesn't forgive easily. It says, "You should have known better." It wants perfection, not out of cruelty, but because it believes that's the only way to be worthy. But here's the paradox. The more we try to protect the ego, the more we suffer. Because life isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be experienced, fully, wildly, imperfectly. In Buddhist philosophy, the ego is often seen as a necessary illusion. It helps us function, navigate roles, build relationships. But problems arise when we start to believe the ego is who we are, rather than just a mask we wear, like a costume worn so long. We forget we're in a play. True freedom begins the moment we step back and notice the ego without judgment, without shame. Just noticing, there you are, trying to keep me safe again. We thank it, we breathe, and we soften when you feel yourself needing to be right, needing to explain, needing to control. Pause. Ask yourself, what is this really about? What am I afraid will happen if I let this go most of the time? The fear isn't about the situation itself. It's about the story underneath. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of losing identity. But who would you be without those fears? Who would you be if you didn't have to prove anything? What if being misunderstood wasn't a threat, but an invitation to rest, to release? To be Celeste eventually began practicing ego check-ins, moments throughout the day where she'd pause and ask, is this truly urgent, or is my ego feeling unsafe? That simple question became her compass. Over time, she found more space, more laughter, more ease. She stopped needing everything to go her way and started flowing with what was. She still had preferences. She still had opinions, but they were no longer shields. They were simply expressions, fluid, changeable, soft. And that's the heart of this teaching. The ego hardens us. Awareness softens us. You don't need to kill the ego. That's just another trick of it, trying to win in disguise. You simply need to recognize when it's speaking and choose a different voice, a voice of compassion, a voice of trust, a voice that says, even if this isn't going my way, I am still okay. Because the truth is, you are not the role you play. You are not your successes. You are not your failures. You are not the plans that did or didn't work out. You are something quieter, deeper, more enduring. You are the awareness beneath it all, the one who breathes, the one who witnesses, the one who lets go, not to lose, but to come home. There comes a point when even the strongest minds grow tired, not because they have failed, not because they are weak, but because they have been holding on for too long, gripping too tightly to the illusion that if they just try harder, think faster, plan better, they can finally feel okay. But when is it ever enough? This question doesn't arrive like thunder. It creeps in slowly, in the quiet moments, in the weariness you feel when waking up to yet another list of things to manage, in the frustration that bubbles up when people don't act the way you hoped they would, in the emptiness that lingers even after checking off every box. The mind that controls is the mind that constantly measures. It compares today to yesterday. It weighs what you've done against what you should have done. It wonders, could I have done more? Should I have prevented this? It creates a loop where peace is always just one more task away, just one more success beyond your current reach. But the finish line keeps moving. You tell yourself, I'll rest when things settle down, but they don't. Or, I'll be happy once this problem is solved, but another problem appears. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that the mind, conditioned by control, has forgotten how to rest in what is. I once spoke to a man named Jordan. He was a high-level executive, deeply respected, extremely efficient, always in command. But behind his success was a constant hum of anxiety. I don't know how to relax, he told me. Even when I'm on vacation, my mind keeps scanning for things to fix. Jordan wasn't addicted to stress. He was addicted to the sense of safety that control gave him. It had become his shield against uncertainty. But the price he paid for that shield was exhaustion. He said, "It's like I'm carrying a backpack filled with bricks, and every day I add another one. I don't know how to put it down." What Jordan described is not uncommon. So many of us walk through life carrying invisible burdens. We carry the need to make others happy, the fear of being misunderstood, the pressure to always be strong, kind, calm, right. We don't realize how heavy it is until we pause and suddenly notice how tired we've become. But here's a quiet truth. The need to control is not sustainable. The mind is not meant to bear the weight of every possible outcome, every emotion, every decision of every person around you. It was never your job to orchestrate the universe. And yet, somewhere along the way, you were made to believe that if you let go, everything would fall apart. But maybe, just maybe, things would begin to fall into place, because control doesn't create peace. It only delays the fear. And the more you delay it, the louder it gets. So, how do we begin to loosen our grip? We begin with one simple but radical shift. We start asking ourselves, not, how can I fix this? But what am I afraid will happen if I don't? Often, it's not the situation itself that drains us. It's the fear of what it might mean about us. If I don't control this, will they think I'm careless? If I don't manage every detail, will I lose love, respect, security? These are deep fears, often rooted in old wounds. Perhaps as a child you learned that love was conditional on performance, or that safety only came when you were the responsible one. And so, over time, you became the planner, the problem solver, the one who made sure nothing fell apart. But in doing so, you forgot what it feels like to rest. True rest isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional. It's the moment you stop rehearsing what to say, stop imagining what could go wrong, stop trying to be everything to everyone. It's the moment you say, "This is enough. I am enough. Right here, right now, just as I am." You may not believe that at first. The mind will resist. It will say, "But what about this? And what about that?" That's okay. Don't fight the thoughts. Just watch them. Let them pass, like clouds in the sky. Jordan eventually learned to practice what he called micro-letting go. He started with small moments, choosing not to check his email after dinner, allowing his team to make decisions without his oversight, saying, "I don't know," without shame. At first, it felt uncomfortable, even dangerous. But then something surprising happened. Nothing collapsed. In fact, he found that people around him became more empowered. Problems resolved themselves. And most importantly, his inner world began to soften. I didn't realize how tense I had become until I started breathing again. He told me, "This is the gift of surrender, not giving up, but giving yourself permission to stop holding so tightly. It's the wisdom to know that life continues even when you let go. That peace isn't something you earn through effort, but something you return to through presence. Ask yourself, what am I still trying to control that is no longer serving me? It might be a relationship, a project, a self-image, a past mistake. What would it feel like to loosen your grip? Just a little to say, maybe I don't need to carry this anymore." You may find that what you feared wasn't failure, it was freedom. Because when you stop measuring your worth by what you can control, you start discovering who you really are beneath the striving soft, open, human. There's a story about a monk who held a bowl of water so tightly that it spilled with every step. A teacher saw him and gently said, "Hold it like you would hold a baby bird, not too tight, not too loose. Let it rest in your palms. Your life is the same. You don't need to grip it. You just need to be with it." And when the mind asks, "Is this enough?" pause, breathe, and answer gently, "Yes, this is enough." In a quiet village surrounded by tall mountains and crisp morning mist, there once lived a monk named Teacup. He was not well known outside the monastery, nor did he seek recognition. But among those who walked the path of practice, he was remembered not for his teachings, but for his presence. Teacup's eyes held stillness, like a pond untouched by wind. He rarely spoke. And when he did, it was never to lecture or correct. Instead, he shared stories, simple ones, the kind that seemed almost too ordinary. But within them was a seed, one that, when allowed to settle in the soil of silence, could grow into something quietly profound. One story, in particular, passed from mouth to ear for generations, became known as the overflowing water jar. It began on a day when the monastery welcomed a new novice. The boy, barely 17, had traveled from the southern provinces, carrying nothing but a cloth bag and a heart filled with hopes. He had heard of Teacup and longed to become wise like him. From the moment he arrived, the boy, his name was Hiro, threw himself into practice. He woke before dawn, scrubbed the meditation hall floors until they shone, memorized chants with perfect precision, and fasted every second day. He read sutras late into the night and copied them by hand by candlelight. The older monk smiled at his enthusiasm, but Takuan watched in silence. After 2 months, Hiro came to Takuan during afternoon silence. He bowed deeply and said, "Master, I have followed every rule. I have fasted, chanted, cleaned, and studied, but my mind is still not calm. I still feel restless, and sometimes even angry. What else must I do?" Takuan looked at him for a long time, then asked, "Have you fetched water today?" Hiro blinked. Confused? "No, Master. I was memorizing the Heart Sutra." "Then go," Takuan said gently, "and bring me a full jar of water from the stream." Hiro bowed, unsure how this would help, but obeyed. He walked down the narrow path to the stream that ran through the edge of the forest. He dipped the clay jar into the cold water and filled it carefully to the top, balancing it with both hands. He returned to Takuan's hut and placed the jar before him. Takuan looked at the jar, then back at Hiro. "Now fill it again." "But it's already full," Hiro replied, eyebrows knitted. "Then pour it out," Takuan said. Hiro hesitated, but did as he was told. He poured the clear water onto the earth beside the hut. The dry soil drank it quickly. "Now fill it again," Takuan repeated, and so Hiro did walk to the stream, filled the jar, brought it back. "Again," Takuan said, "pour it out." The third time, Hiro could not hold his frustration. "Master, what does this have to do with my practice?" "I came to you with an earnest heart. I've worked hard. Why won't you teach me how to find peace?" Takuan's voice was calm. "You say the jar is already full, yet you come asking for more water. You say you want peace, but your mind is overflowing with effort, with ambition, with desire to become something." He pointed at the jar. "Now empty. This jar," he said, "can receive water only when it is empty. Your heart is no different." Hiro stood still. The wind stirred the pine trees above them. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called once, then fell quiet. "You try to control your mind through discipline," Takuan continued, "but discipline without stillness becomes noise. You fill your days with doing, hoping that the right effort will bring the right outcome. But peace is not a result of doing. It is a result of being." Takuan picked up the jar and turned it upside down, letting the last drops fall. When you are full of effort, full of self, full of plans, there is no room for peace to enter. Sometimes, the most profound practice is to do nothing, to sit, to breathe, to empty. That night, Hiro didn't read, he didn't fast. He simply sat in the garden under the stars, listening to the sound of the stream, and something inside him, something tight and wound, began to soften. The story of Takuan and the water jar is not about discipline versus laziness. It is about balance. It reminds us that the mind, like a vessel, must be emptied regularly if it is to receive anything new. How often do we approach life like Hiro, eager, hardworking, constantly adding more to our schedules, our self-improvement lists, our spiritual checkboxes without ever pausing to ask, is my heart full of noise? We live in a world that celebrates effort, production, optimization, but effort without rest becomes strain. Focus without softness becomes rigidity. Even the most beautiful song needs silence between the notes. Even the most sacred breath needs the space of stillness between inhale and exhale. Takuan's teaching was gentle, but radical. He offered Hiro, and through him, all of us permission to pause, to stop overfilling the jar, to stop striving for enlightenment as if it were a prize to win, rather than a quiet return to the self. You don't have to abandon your aspirations. You don't have to stop learning or growing. But perhaps, once in a while, you can step back, pour out the contents of your mental jar, the comparisons, the judgments, the endless to-dos, and just be. You may find, like Hiro, that in doing less, something deeper begins to emerge. Not a new insight, not a spiritual breakthrough, but a stillness, a silence, and within that silence, a knowing that you are never lacking, that peace has always been here, waiting behind the noise. The mind will resist this at first. It will ask, but what about progress? What about goals? Let it ask. Smile gently at the questions and keep emptying. Each breath, a release. Each pause, a returning. Each still moment, an act of trust. You are the jar. Life is the stream, and peace does not come from filling, but from learning when and how to pour out. Something happens when you finally let go, not with a sense of resignation, but with a quiet, conscious breath. It's not dramatic. There are no fireworks or thunderclaps, just a soft, subtle shift, a loosening inside your chest, a silence where struggle once echoed. This is the moment of the first true realization that you don't need to hold on, not to what hurt you, not to what you think defines you, not even to what you love most, because life is not a possession. It is a passing, and the more you try to grip it, the more it slips through. We're not taught this. We grow up learning to cling to ideals, to outcomes, to people, to roles. We build our identities from expectations and memories. We build our safety on control, and we are praised for it when we plan well, when we endure, when we hold tight. But no one teaches us the wisdom of releasing. No one tells us that sometimes. Strength looks like surrender, that maturity is learning what to set down, that healing is not found in clutching the past, but in facing the present with open hands. I once met a woman named Mira. She had spent most of her adult life trying to hold her family together. Her husband had left a decade ago, but she never stopped trying to prove she was enough. Her grown children visited less and less, and she blamed herself. If I could just do more, she would say, maybe things would be different. She carried guilt like a second skin. Every quiet evening was filled with self-questioning. Every silence felt like rejection. I can't stop thinking, she confessed. It's like my mind is a loop. If I let go, I'll disappear. But what Mira feared losing was not her family. It was the idea of herself as the one who holds things together. That identity had become a form of comfort, even as it caused her pain. She didn't know who she'd be without it, and so we sat together, quietly, not to fix, not to solve, but to observe. I asked her, what if you didn't have to hold it all? She blinked. Then who would I be? That's the question, I said, and maybe the answer is lighter than you think. That was the beginning of something, not a solution, but a spaciousness. Over the weeks that followed, Mira began practicing what she called intentional loosening. Each morning, she asked herself, "What am I gripping today that I could release?" Even for a moment, some days, it was the pressure to call her children. Some days, it was the internal monologue of self-blame. Some days, it was the urge to tidy things that weren't hers to manage. She didn't abandon responsibility. She didn't become careless, but she started to see that much of what she clung to was not service. It was fear. And when fear guides your grip, letting go becomes the most courageous act. We all have something we're holding too tightly. For some, it's a version of success. For others, it's a love that has changed. For many, it's an idea of who they were supposed to become. These grips are often invisible to the outside world. No one sees your inner hand clenched around control, but you feel it in your breath, in your shoulders, in the way you can't quite relax. So what happens when you open that hand? You may not lose everything. You may not lose anything. But you gain something different: clarity, stillness, presence. It's like standing in a room you've overfilled with furniture. There's no space to move. But once you start removing what doesn't belong, what's outdated, broken, no longer meaningful, you begin to feel the floor beneath your feet. You begin to breathe again. Letting go is not forgetting. It's not pretending something never mattered. It's simply honoring that everything has its time, and some things have reached their end. Some roles, some habits, some versions of you. And in that space, something new can begin to emerge. In Buddhist teachings, non-attachment is often misunderstood. People think it means indifference, that if you don't cling, you don't care. But the opposite is true. Non-attachment is the deepest form of love because it allows everything to be what it is, without forcing, without owning, without needing. Imagine holding a butterfly in your hands. If you grip it, you crush it. But if you let it rest lightly, it stays. It may even return. That's how presence works. That's how peace arrives. I remember a quiet walk through a forest years ago. The leaves had begun to fall, and every step crunched with the sound of endings. And yet, it didn't feel sad. It felt honest. Nature doesn't cling to summer. The trees don't fight the wind. They release, season by season, trusting the rhythm of change. And maybe that's the great unlearning for us all, that we don't have to hold everything. That life is not asking us to carry it all. That much of our suffering doesn't come from what happens, but from our resistance to its impermanence. So how do we begin? Start small. Ask yourself, each morning, what can I release today? Even for a moment. Maybe it's the need to explain yourself. Maybe it's the judgment you keep recycling. Maybe it's the fear that if you're not constantly improving, you're falling behind. And then, breathe. You don't have to let go perfectly. You just have to begin. Mira once said something that I still carry with me. Letting go didn't feel like losing. It felt like coming home. Because beneath the grip, beneath the worry, beneath the constant trying, there is a quiet self, waiting. Not to be better, not to be more, but simply to be. To sit in the sunlight without solving anything. To drink tea without multitasking. To laugh without proving. To grieve without shame. To live without armor. That self is always here. It never left. It's just been waiting for the noise to soften, the hands to unclench, the heart to open. You are not what you hold. You are the space that remains when you release. You are not the story of control. You are the silence that arises when the story ends. Let this be the first realization that nothing you truly are can ever be lost. Only the masks can fall. Only the effort can fade. Only the false weights can be put down. And when they are, what's left is not emptiness. It's freedom. It's you. There's a phrase many people whisper to themselves during their most uncertain moments. I can't let go. If I do, it means I've failed. Or worse, if I let go, I'll lose everything I care about. We grow up believing that letting go is synonymous with quitting, that it signals weakness, surrender, even cowardice. So we keep holding on long past the point of exhaustion. We grip jobs that drain us, relationships that no longer nourish us, beliefs that no longer fit. We carry burdens that were never ours, simply because to set them down feels like defeat. But what if this belief that letting go means giving up is the very illusion keeping us stuck? What if letting go isn't a sign of weakness, but a radical act of wisdom? This misunderstanding begins early. We're praised for pushing through, for being strong, for never giving up. And yes, there is power in resilience. There is beauty in persistence. But no one teaches us the equal value of discernment, the ability to know when something no longer serves our path, and the courage to release it. Letting go, in its truest form, is not abandonment. It's alignment. It's choosing to walk in harmony with life rather than fighting against its natural currents. I once met a man named Carlos. He had spent nearly 15 years building a business. It was successful by every external measure. He had clients, influence, wealth, but he felt empty. Each morning, he woke with dread. His body ached from stress. His creativity had dried up. And yet, he couldn't imagine stepping away. If I stop, he said, what does that say about me? That I gave up, that I wasted all these years. But Carlos wasn't failing. He was evolving. The person he had become was no longer in alignment with the work he once loved. Letting go wasn't about erasing his past. It was about honoring who he had become now. Through reflection and silence, he began to shift his question from, what will I lose, to what might I gain? He didn't quit overnight. He paused. He listened. He made room for new questions. And slowly, something else emerged. Something softer, more fulfilling, more true. He transitioned into mentoring young entrepreneurs. He still used his gifts, but now in a way that nourished rather than depleted him. Carlos didn't give up. He let go, and in doing so, he rediscovered his soul. This is what letting go can do, not strip us of meaning, but return us to it. The difficulty lies in the ego. The ego clings to labels, success, loyalty, identity. It wants consistency, even at the cost of joy. It says, if I let go, who will I be? And that's a scary question, because we're not always ready to face the blank page. But letting go isn't erasing. It's editing. It's refining the story, making space for what truly belongs. Imagine a tree in autumn. Does it look weak when it drops its leaves? Do we pity it for letting go? Of course not. We understand that shedding is part of its cycle, that it must release in order to rest, that it must rest in order to bloom. Why? Then, do we resist our own seasons? Why do we fear what nature embraces without question? Perhaps because no one ever showed us how. Letting go is a skill, and like all skills, it requires practice, it requires trust, it requires grief. Yes, grief. Because even when we're letting go of something that causes pain, a toxic relationship, a job that crushes us, an old wound, we grieve. We grieve the version of ourselves that once believed it was right. We grieve the time we invested, the hopes we had, the identity we built around it. And grief is not weakness, it's love. To grieve is to acknowledge that something mattered, and to let it go anyway is to say, I am still whole, even without it. There's a story I once heard about a traveler who reached a river to cross. He built a raft from bamboo and vines. It carried him safely to the other side. But once he reached land, he continued carrying the raft on his back through the forest, up the hills, across new terrain. Eventually, the weight slowed him down. He stumbled. He was tired, but he couldn't bring himself to put the raft down. It saved me. He thought. It mattered. But that raft was meant for water, not land. Its purpose had passed. We all carry rafts' beliefs, identities, survival tools that once served us. But at some point, we must ask, is this still helping me? Or am I just afraid to leave it behind? Letting go is not forgetting the value of what helped you survive. It's recognizing that you've outgrown the need to carry it. So what might it look like in your life? Maybe it means stepping back from a friendship that drains you, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself and for the space both of you need. Maybe it means releasing an old goal that no longer aligns with who you are. You're not failing. You're evolving. Maybe it's letting go of an old version of yourself, the one who always needed to be in control, to be perfect, to be right. What could open up for you if you set that down? Letting go might feel uncomfortable at first. The mind will try to pull you back, to tell you stories of regret, fear, shame. That's okay. That's part of the process. You don't have to silence those voices. Just don't let them drive. Breathe. Feel your feet. Feel your breath. And remember, letting go doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes, it's a series of small moments, a deep breath instead of a harsh word, a pause before reacting, a single tear falling, followed by stillness. Sometimes, it's the act of not responding to that text, not checking that profile, not reopening a wound that's been trying to close. These are the quiet acts of letting go, and they are brave, because to let go is not to say, "This didn't matter." It's to say, "It mattered enough for me to face the truth, and now I choose freedom." So ask yourself gently, what am I still holding on to because I think I'm supposed to? Who would you be without that story? What if surrender wasn't loss, but space for breath, space for joy, space for who you are becoming? Let this be your beginning, not a collapse, not a retreat, but a return to trust, a return to truth. a return to the part of you that never needed to grip so tightly to be worthy of love, peace, or life itself. Letting go is not giving up. It is finally giving yourself back. In the heart of the Buddha's teachings lies a paradox. True freedom does not come from gaining, but from releasing. The path to peace is not paved with accumulation, but with detachment, with the quiet, radical act of letting go. To many, the word detachment sounds cold, even cruel. They imagine a person indifferent to the world, distant from love, removed from life. But in the language of the Dharma, detachment upekkha is not the absence of care. It is the presence of wisdom. The Buddha didn't teach detachment to make us numb. He taught it to help us suffer less. He saw how the human mind clings to people, to outcomes, to ideas of how things should be. And he saw how that clinging becomes the root of our sorrow. Not the loss itself, not the change itself, but the resistance to what is. Whatever is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. He said, "It sounds simple, but this single sentence contains the entire truth of impermanence. Everything changes, every joy, every sorrow, every breath. And when we try to freeze life, to hold it still in our hands, we suffer because it was never meant to be held. Imagine trying to grasp flowing water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. But if you open your hands, the water can rest there for a moment, light and free. That is the nature of all things. The Buddha taught this through the Four Noble Truths. First, life contains suffering. Second, suffering arises from craving and attachment. Third, freedom is possible. And fourth, there's a path that leads to that freedom. That path is not about withdrawing from life. It is about engaging with life without being enslaved by it. It's about being in the world, but not bound by it. So, what does non-clinging look like? It looks like loving someone fully, while knowing you cannot control their path. It looks like working with devotion, while knowing the outcome is not entirely yours to shape. It looks like greeting both praise and blame with the same calm breath. It is not apathy. It is clarity. There is a story from the early texts of a monk named Sona. He practiced with such fierce discipline that his feet bled from walking meditation, frustrated that he had not yet awakened. He asked the Buddha what more he could do. The Buddha asked, "Sona, when the strings of a lute are too tight, does it make good music?" Number Sona replied, "And when they are too loose, also no. But when they are balanced, not too tight, not too loose, then the music is pure." Sona said. The Buddha smiled. So it is with your practice, not with clinging, not with slacking, but with balance. Detachment is that balance. It is the middle way, not withdrawal, not obsession, but presence without possessiveness. To live this way requires courage, because it asks us to stand in uncertainty, to love without owning, to act without needing reward, to breathe in the now, without gripping the next. But what we gain in return is spaciousness. When you stop clinging, your hands open, your heart opens, your mind quiets. You begin to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be, and that seeing is the beginning of peace. There is a beauty in impermanence that only detachment allows you to see. The fleeting glow of twilight, the last words of a conversation, the way a smile forms and fades. When you don't try to hold it, you can finally witness it, fully, tenderly. And when pain comes, as it will, you no longer need to resist it. You don't have to build walls against loss, because you've come to understand loss is not a failure. It is a part of the flow. It is not the opposite of life. It is life. The Buddha once said, "With attachment comes fear. With attachment comes grief. But one who is free of attachment has no fear and no sorrow." This is not a call to emptiness. It is a call to fullness, the kind that comes when you are not shackled by needing, when you are present not out of obligation, but out of choice, when you are no longer trying to hold life down, but to meet it with grace. This is the power of non-clinging. So how do we begin with awareness? Notice what you grip. Notice where you tense. Notice the thought that says, "I must have this," or "I can't lose this." Sit with that voice. Breathe with it. You don't have to silence it. Just don't believe it. Practice loosening. Loosen your grip on being understood, on being right, on needing things to unfold your way. Loosen your grip on the past, on old stories, on identities that no longer fit. Loosen with love, not because it didn't matter, but because you matter too. Let detachment be your invitation back to balance. Let it remind you that peace is not found in holding everything, but in letting things come and go. Like breath, you are not what you cling to. You are the awareness that sees all things arise and pass. You are not the storming. You are the sky. Once, in a quiet village by a broad river, there lived a man known to all for his devotion to service. Every morning, before the sun rose, he would carry 2 large buckets to the river's edge, fill them with clean water, and haul them back for his family and neighbors. He did this not out of duty, but from a heart full of care. The village respected him for his commitment, admired his strength. His shoulders grew strong, and his path between the huts and the river became a well-worn line of devotion. But one year, the rains came late. The river, once gentle and reliable, grew wild and unpredictable. The current swelled. The banks gave way. What was once a simple task, fetching water, became treacherous. Still, the man kept going. Day after day, he braved the current, shouldered the burden, returned soaked and trembling, but always with his buckets full. His wife pleaded, "We can manage with less. Please, rest." But he shook his head. "If I stop, who will help? They depend on me." And so he continued. One day, the water ran especially high. He stepped into the river, buckets in hand, and as he reached the center, a sudden force swept him off his feet. The buckets, still gripped tightly, dragged him under. For a moment, he flailed. Panic surged. The weight pulled at his arms. The current spun him sideways, and yet he refused to let go. "If I lose the water," he thought, "I've failed. Everything I do will have been for nothing." But the water didn't care. It pulled harder. Finally, a voice deep within him, calmer than fear, older than pride, whispered, "Let go." He resisted. The voice came again, "Let go, or you will drown." With a trembling breath, he released the buckets. They floated away, disappearing into the rush. He surfaced, gasping. The shore was near. He swam toward it, empty-handed, but alive. When he returned to the village, he expected scorn, disappointment. Instead, he was met with relief. with open arms. An elder approached him that evening, touched his weathered hands, and said, "Sometimes, letting go of what we carry is the greatest gift we can offer, not just to others, but to ourselves." That night, as the river flowed beside him, quieter now, the man stared at his empty hands, and for the first time in years, he felt light. This story, though simple, carries a profound truth. Not all burdens are meant to be carried forever. Some, like the buckets, serve us for a time. They give meaning, identity, even connection. But when the current of life changes, so too must our grip. We live in a world that teaches us to hold on to dreams, roles, responsibilities, and often, these things are noble. Like the man with the buckets, we want to serve, to provide, to be useful. But when that service comes at the cost of our own peace, when it becomes entangled with fear, we must ask, am I carrying this because it still serves, or because I'm afraid to let it go? So many of us carry invisible buckets. We carry the weight of being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never complains. We carry the stories of who we're supposed to be, stories inherited from culture, family, past mistakes. We grip them tightly, even when the waters rise, and just like the man in the river, we may not realize how deeply we're drowning until we pause and notice our breath. Letting go does not mean abandoning our values. It does not mean turning away from love or duty. It means recognizing when the form of that love no longer aligns with the flow of our life. The Buddha taught this with clarity. He spoke of the second arrow, not the pain itself, but the suffering we cause by holding on, by clinging to expectations, by resisting the present. The man in the river experienced both arrows. The first was the force of the current. The second was his refusal to release. His freedom came not when the river calmed, but when he surrendered to what was true. The only way forward was through empty hands. It takes courage to let go. It means facing the possibility that we may be misunderstood, that others may not see the sacrifices we've made, that we may not have a clear path ahead. But it also means opening the door to lightness, to breath, to rest. Sometimes, the greatest offering we can make to the world is not our strength, but our humility, not our perfection, but our presence, not our filled buckets, but our willingness to arrive just as we are. Imagine your own life as a river. Along its banks lie the many things you've carried: old dreams, former roles, unfinished stories. Some you've needed, some you've outgrown. All have shaped you. Now imagine yourself standing in the center, waters swirling. What are you still gripping that wants to be released? Take a breath. Ask gently, can I trust life enough to loosen my hold? Let that question guide you, not to recklessness, but to honesty, not to abandonment, but to alignment. The man returned to the river many times, but never again did he carry so much alone. He learned to ask for help, to fill smaller buckets, to rest when needed. He still served, but no longer from fear. He served from presence, from wisdom, and in doing so, he found something deeper than duty. He found peace. So may we all. Letting go is not just an act, it is an art. And like any art, it begins not with impulse, but with awareness. Before we can release, we must learn to see, to discern what truly belongs in our hands and what we are clinging to out of habit, fear, or the stories we've been told. But how do we know? How do we distinguish between the things that still serve our soul and the things that quietly drain it? The answer, perhaps surprisingly, does not lie in logic alone. It lies in quiet listening, in tuning in to the subtle language of the body, the breath, the heart. Begin there. When you think of something, you're holding a relationship, a belief, a role. Pause and notice what arises in your body. Do your shoulders tense? Does your breath shorten? Is there tightness in your chest or calm in your belly? The body doesn't lie. It stores everything: your truth, your resistance, your longing. The first step is noticing. From there, ask a simple question. Does this bring me closer to myself or farther away? The answer may not come in words. It may come as a sigh, a tear, a wave of peace, or a quiet ache you've ignored for too long. I once met a woman named Isla. She had worked for years in a job that paid well, offered prestige, and provided stability for her family. But something in her had begun to dim. Her laughter grew rarer. Her eyes, once bright, carried a weight. She told me, "I don't hate my work, but it no longer feels like mine." So we began the practice of discernment, not by analyzing her resume, but by returning her to herself. Each morning, she sat quietly and asked, "What part of me comes alive in this and? What part of me goes silent over time?" A pattern emerged. Her body felt light when she taught others, mentored young people. It felt heavy when she was in meetings, selling things she no longer believed in. The clarity didn't shout. It whispered. And in that whisper, she found the courage to shift, not overnight, but step by step. She reduced her hours. She started writing again. Eventually, she created space for a new path. She didn't throw her life away. She refined it. That is the art of discernment. We often assume that releasing means cutting ties, walking away, burning bridges. But sometimes, it's softer than that. Sometimes, letting go means loosening your grip, taking a step back, breathing space into something that's grown too tight. It means asking, is this nourishing me or depleting me? Am I holding this out of love or out of obligation? Is this part of my growth or a reflection of who I used to be? Not every hard thing must be dropped. Some challenges grow us. Some discomfort is sacred. But there's a difference between effort that stretches you and effort that erodes you. Learn the difference. Hold close the things that call you deeper into your truth. Relationships where you can be real. Work that reflects your heart. Values that still feel alive in your bones. Release what demands you shrink. Silence or twist yourself to fit. Release what clutters your inner space. And remember, just because something once mattered doesn't mean it still does. Letting go is not a betrayal of your past. It is a devotion to your present. The Buddha often spoke of the raft. He said, "Just as a man builds a raft to cross the river, and then leaves it behind on the far shore, so too must we let go of teachings, roles, and tools once they have served their purpose. Even the teachings, even the things that once saved you. There is profound wisdom in that, a kind of sacred humility. It reminds us that clinging even to what is holy can become a weight. So, what do you hold? And more importantly, why? Sometimes we hold things because we're afraid of the space their absence might create. Afraid of who we might be without them, afraid of the silence that follows. But that silence is not emptiness. It is room for what is next, for what is real. I remember once placing a stone in my palm during a retreat. It was small, smooth, and warm from the sun. I held it for hours, pressing it tightly. After a while, my hand cramped. The stone hadn't changed, but my grip had exhausted me, so I opened my hand, let it rest in my palm. It didn't fall. It stayed, freely. That's the kind of holding that brings peace open, gentle, without fear. Not all things need to be dropped. Some simply need to be held differently, with less effort, with more breath. So if you're unsure what to release, start with how you're holding it. Are you gripping in fear or holding in love? Are you weighed down or lifted? And in the stillness that follows, let the truth rise not from your mind, but from your deeper knowing. Discernment is not about quick answers. It is about honest presence, about learning to trust yourself again, about honoring both your limits and your longings. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force clarity. Sit, breathe, ask, and little by little, the answers will come, not as rules, but as a feeling, a softening, a sigh, a sense of yes. Hold that. Let the rest drift away. There comes a moment in every honest life when the mirror refuses to lie, when the mask we've worn for years begins to crack, and the voice within whispers, not in judgment, but in clarity, "This isn't who I really am." It's a quiet reckoning, one that doesn't always arrive with drama or crisis. Sometimes it comes while brushing your teeth, while folding laundry, while watching the sunset and realizing it doesn't move you the way it used to. And you find yourself wondering, not in panic, but with deep ache, is this the life I meant to live? That question, when followed, leads to a threshold. On one side, familiarity, approval, roles you've learned to play so well you almost forgot they were costumes. On the other, something unknown, unnamed, unshaped, but true. To cross that threshold requires only one thing: letting go. Not letting go of everything, but letting go of what is not true. Because the life that fits your soul is waiting, but it cannot reach you while you are buried in what you are not. I once met a man named Julian who had spent over a decade building his reputation as a successful architect. He was brilliant, respected, and deeply admired in his field. But beneath it all, he felt hollow, not from lack of work, but from the slow erosion of meaning. He told me, "I've spent years constructing structures for others, but I've never built something that reflected me." When he first dared to imagine walking away, the fear was immense. What will people say? How will I explain this? Am I ungrateful? But underneath those fears was something even deeper. If I stop pretending, will I still belong? That fear is not unique to Julian. It lives in all of us. The part that clings not to what is real, but to what is accepted. And that is where the illusion lies. Because belonging that demands you betray yourself is not belonging. It's imprisonment dressed in comfort. True belonging begins the moment you choose truth over approval. Julian did not abandon architecture. He reimagined it. He began designing sacred spaces, small, intentional homes, community retreat structures that reflected silence, reflection, and connection to nature. His income changed, his lifestyle shifted, but he said, "For the first time, I feel like I'm breathing in my own skin." That's the gift of letting go. It doesn't leave you with less, it returns you to more. Not more stuff, more self. Letting go to live truthfully is not about walking away from every responsibility or shedding every role. It's about checking gently and honestly. Does this reflect my inner truth? Or have I stayed because I'm afraid to disappoint? The world teaches us to curate our lives for others, to filter ourselves into likability, to succeed in ways that are measurable, marketable, monetizable. But your soul doesn't care how many followers you have. It cares whether your choices align with your core, and your core doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in discomfort, in fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, in the joy that feels forced, in the ache that rises in silence. And the longer you ignore it, the louder life becomes, not to punish you, but to call you back. Because the cost of living untruthfully isn't just burnout. It's disconnection from others, from joy, from the steady inner ground of being fully yourself. So what does it look like to return? It begins with noticing where you've disappeared. In conversations where you nod but don't agree. In jobs where you perform but don't feel. In relationships where you smile but feel invisible. These are the moments truth knocks. Then comes the decision not to revolt, but to realign. To say no when you mean no. To pause when everyone's rushing. To step back from the thing that no longer fits. Not because you failed, but because you've grown. Letting go to live truthfully means being willing to disappoint others in order to be at peace with yourself. And yes, that's hard, because we've been taught that love means pleasing, that worth means proving, that success means winning. But none of those things can sustain a soul that longs for truth. The Buddha once said, "Your work is to discover your world and then with all your heart, give yourself to it." But you cannot give yourself to your true world while tangled in a false one. Letting go doesn't always look like a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's quiet, slow, internal. The releasing of a habit, the shedding of a role, the turning down of a volume you no longer wish to hear. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is whisper to yourself, "I am allowed to change." Because change is not betrayal, it's evolution. And no one is served by your performance. But everyone is touched by your truth. There is a peace that comes not when life gets easier, but when you stop lying to yourself. There is a freedom that rises not when you have everything, but when you no longer need what doesn't feel real. So ask yourself, what am I pretending to enjoy? What am I afraid to admit? What part of me have I placed in hiding? Just to keep things smooth, and if the answers sting, let them. Pain is not punishment. It is often the invitation to return. To live truthfully is to walk with discomfort, but also with integrity. It is to risk misunderstanding, but to gain your own respect. It is to release the applause, but reclaim your voice, and you are worthy of that voice. You are worthy of a life that reflects your depth. You are worthy of peace not bought by compliance, but earned by honesty. Letting go to live truthfully is not the easy path, but it is the clear one. The path where your inner and outer life no longer contradict. where your smile reaches your eyes, where your choices come from knowing, not fear. May you find the courage to let go, not to lose yourself, but to finally come home to who you truly are. There is a quiet art to releasing, not in a grand gesture, but in a breath, in a moment, in the soft unfolding of tension you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. Most of us think letting go has to be all at once dramatic, sudden, absolute. But what if it could be gentle? What if it could be done one thing at a time? That is the heart of this practice. We live much of our lives in contraction, holding thoughts, emotions, identities, roles, worries. We carry them like stones in a bag slung over our back, forgetting that we picked them up and that we can put them down. Meditation offers us the space to remember, not just mentally, but physically, emotionally, to remember what it feels like to rest, to release, to return to a deeper self that exists beneath the weight. This meditation is simple. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to understand everything. You only need to sit, to breathe, and to let go of one thing at a time. So find a quiet space. Sit in a position that supports you on a cushion, a chair, even lying down if needed. Let your spine be long, but not rigid. Your hands resting on your lap or by your side. Close your eyes. Gently. Take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Again. Inhale and exhale. Let your body begin to settle. Feel the contact between your body and the surface beneath you. Feel the weight of gravity. You do not need to hold yourself up by effort. Let the ground support you. Now, bring your awareness to your breath. Feel the rise and fall in your chest or belly. Noticing, without needing to change anything. And now, gently, begin the practice of putting down one thing at a time. Start with your body. Notice, is there any tension you can soften your jaw? Can it relax your shoulders? Can they fall away from your ears? Your hands, unclenched. The belly? Can it loosen? Let the breath be your guide. Inhale, and on the exhale, release. Now move to the level of thought. Notice what you're carrying today. A worry, a to-do list, a self-judgment, a memory from earlier. Whatever it is, see if you can name it quietly in your mind, then say gently to yourself, on the next exhale, I put this down. You don't need to push it away. You don't need to banish it. Just set it beside you. Let it rest for now. You can come back to it later, if you choose. Now scan for another thought, another weight, perhaps a fear about the future, an expectation you're gripping, an apology you never gave or never received. Name it. Feel it in your body. And on the exhale, I put this down. Continue like this, slowly, one thing at a time. Letting your mind bring forward whatever needs space, whatever is ready to be released. Maybe it's an old belief I must always be strong, or a story, I'm not enough unless I achieve, or a role you've been playing, the one who holds it all together. See it, honor it. Then breathe out. I put this down. Let each release be like laying a stone at the edge of a river, not throwing it, just setting it gently and letting the current take it. Notice how your body feels as you do this. Notice the space that opens, the quiet, the stillness. And if a new thought appears, one that clings tighter, that says, I can't let go of this one, that's okay. You don't have to force it. You can sit beside it. Place a hand on your heart. If it helps, say, not yet, but maybe soon. Even that is letting go. Letting go of urgency, of control. Let it be what it is. Now return again to your breath. Feel its rhythm. Inhale and exhale. You are not your thoughts. You are not what you carry. You are the one who sees, the one who breathes. Now, slowly, bring to mind something small, a burden you've been holding that perhaps you don't even notice anymore. A small tension, a tight hope, a desire to be seen a certain way. Feel it. Hold it in your attention like a pebble in your palm. And now, as if offering it to the earth, say softly, I don't need to carry this right now. Let it go. And notice what remains. Not emptiness, but presence. You are still here, whole, even as things fall away. Now bring your hands together at your heart, if that feels natural, or rest them gently over your chest. Feel your breath one more time. Feel your body, lighter, and in your own way. Thank yourself for your courage to release, for your willingness to sit, to soften, to be with what is. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Let your gaze be soft. Look around your space. And take this feeling with you, not as something to hold tightly, but as something to return to, again and again. The practice of letting go is not a one-time act. It is a way of being, a rhythm, a kindness. Some days you will pick things back up. That's okay. There is no failure here. Only practice. Only breath. Only the next small thing to release. And in time, you may find that you are carrying less, not because the world is easier, but because you are more free. One breath, one thought, one quiet release at a time. What does it truly mean to be free? Not in the way society often defines it with open schedules, passports full of stamps, or the power to choose among endless options, but something deeper. A freedom that lives within, a kind that cannot be taken, because it is not built on circumstances, but on clarity. This is inner freedom. It's a quiet state, often unnoticed from the outside, but unmistakably felt from within. It's the peace that arises when you no longer need life to meet your every condition in order to be okay. When you stop demanding that others behave a certain way, that success look a certain way, that your path unfold a certain way. It is freedom from the need to control, and that freedom, paradoxically, is what allows us to finally live. We spend much of our lives trying to manage things that are beyond us. We try to plan outcomes, prevent pain, protect images. We believe that if we just organize well enough, think far enough ahead, do everything just right, then nothing will hurt us. Then we'll finally be safe. But what we're really doing is building a cage. A beautiful cage. Perhaps a cage decorated with achievement, control, and order, but a cage nonetheless. Because every time we believe I'll only be okay if, we hand our peace over to something outside of us, and anything you need in order to be okay owns you. True inner freedom is different. It's the ability to meet life as it is, not as you wish it would be. To breathe in uncertainty and still feel grounded, to lose something or someone, and still remember who you are. This kind of freedom doesn't come from escaping. It comes from staying with yourself, with your breath, with what's real. I once sat with a woman named Clara, whose life had been shaped by anxiety for years. She had tried every technique, read every book, sought out every solution. Still, her days were ruled by what-if scenarios, by the need to control everything from her family's schedule to the weather on vacation. "I just want to feel free," she said. So we sat in silence, and I asked her, "Right now, in this moment, without changing anything, where is your breath?" She blinked, surprised. "I don't know. Can you feel it?" I asked. "Just that. Not fix it. Just notice it." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in that session, her shoulders dropped. "That," I said softly, "is where your freedom begins. Not in managing what comes next, but in returning to this." Clara wasn't broken. She was caught in the trance of control, and as she began to see that she could be with herself, even when things felt uncertain, a new kind of strength emerged, not the strength of control, but the strength of presence. This is the paradox of inner freedom. It doesn't make you invulnerable. It makes you whole. It doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It means you trust yourself to stay with it, rather than run from it. And that trust changes everything, because when you are no longer afraid to feel, you are no longer afraid to live. You stop needing life to protect you from discomfort. You stop editing your emotions for the sake of peace. You stop outsourcing your worth to outcomes. You start showing up as you are not because it's safe, but because it's true. The Buddha spoke of this freedom often. He didn't promise a life without hardship. He promised a path through it, a way of being that is grounded in awareness, compassion, and non-attachment. One teaching compares the awakened mind to a lotus rooted in mud, but rising clean above the water. This is not a denial of the mud. It is a transformation through it. Inner freedom is not apathy. It's not indifference. It's not bypassing or pretending that nothing matters. It's the deep knowing that you can care without clinging, love without losing yourself, act without grasping at results. It's the ability to walk into any moment and know I can be with this, even this. That kind of freedom comes slowly. It comes with practice, with noticing, with breathing into the space between reaction and response, with choosing presence over prediction. Sometimes it means pausing before you speak. Sometimes it means letting yourself cry without trying to fix the reason. Sometimes it means looking at your own pain with tenderness rather than shame. And slowly, as you keep choosing to return to your breath, to your center, to the truth beneath the story, you begin to feel it. A soft spaciousness, a widening, a stillness that holds even the storm. And you realize this is what I was searching for all along. Not perfection, not control, but this quiet, steady place inside me that doesn't need to prove anything to belong. This is your birthright. Not something you earn, but something you remember. So if you're tired of holding it all together, tired of performing certainty, tired of managing what cannot be managed, let this be your permission to rest, to drop the armor, to trust that you don't have to control everything to be okay. You only have to return again and again to the breath, to the body, to the truth of now. That's where your freedom lives. Not in the next achievement, not in the perfect plan, but in this moment, right here, right now, unclenched. If you sit quietly long enough, nature begins to speak, not in words, but in rhythm, in movement, in silence. Among its many teachers, the wind is one of the most mysterious. It has no shape, no color, no destination, yet it moves with such power, such clarity. It travels across mountains and oceans without asking permission. It comes and goes, not according to our needs, but according to something deeper, something we cannot command. The wind teaches a lesson many of us have forgotten: that freedom does not require a plan, that movement does not need control, that direction is not always a decision. It is sometimes a surrender. We live in a culture obsessed with direction, with goals, strategies, outcomes. We are taught to ask, what's your 5-year plan? Where are you going? What's next? And while vision has its place, there's a kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to steer every moment of our lives, from constantly pushing forward without allowing for the wisdom of the unknown. But the wind doesn't push, it flows. And in that flow, there is a deeper intelligence, one that doesn't rely on effort, but on presence. I remember a retreat where we spent an entire day in silence outdoors. No talking, no phones, no schedules, just walking among trees, sitting by the river, feeling the earth. At one point, I stood on a hillside, watching the grass bow under the wind's caress. It didn't resist. It didn't try to stay upright. It swayed, bent, released, and then rose again, unbroken. It struck me. Then the grass wasn't weak. It was wise. It knew how to yield without losing itself. It knew how to respond to life without needing to control it. And what about us? We brace. We harden. We fight the currents of change. We exhaust ourselves trying to stay strong, when perhaps the real strength lies in softening. What would it mean to be like the wind, to trust your movement, even when it doesn't make sense yet, to allow yourself to drift for a while, not lost, but free to follow, not a map, but a pulse, a breath, a quiet knowing? This isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to life, to presence, to the unfolding that happens when we stop forcing and start listening. There's a word in Zen Mu that roughly translates to neither yes nor no. It's the space beyond answers, beyond certainty, a place of openness, of surrender. The wind lives in that space. So can we. When we stop demanding clarity from life and start finding clarity within ourselves, we begin to move like wind, not erratic, but unbound, not scattered, but responsive. We stop needing to explain ourselves at every turn. We stop measuring every step by whether it leads to something useful. We begin to trust that being here, fully, is purpose enough. There's a kind of intelligence in not knowing, in waking up each morning and asking not, what should I achieve today? But what is life inviting me into right now? Maybe it's stillness, maybe it's change, maybe it's simply noticing the wind against your skin and realizing I'm alive. I'm here. I don't need to fix this moment. I just need to feel it. That kind of surrender is not passive. It's not resignation. It's participation. Participation in the deeper current of life that exists beyond your plans. We've been taught that if we're not moving towards something specific, we're wasting time. But the wind doesn't think in terms of waste. It moves because movement is its nature. Can you let that be enough? There's a story from the Taoist tradition about a man who tried to harness the wind. He built a great structure: towers, sails, weights, hoping to trap its energy. But the more he tried to control it, the more it eluded him. It came at odd hours. It refused to obey. It knocked over parts of his machine. In frustration, he gave up. He tore down the structures, walked to the riverbank, and sat. The wind passed over him like a whisper, and for the first time, he listened not with his ears, but with his being. That was the beginning of his peace. He realized the wind was never meant to be mastered. It was meant to be met. What parts of your life are you still trying to master, to direct, to organize into something certain and explainable? What if those parts are asking not for mastery, but for meeting, for presence, for surrender? Just like the wind, you are allowed to change, to move without always knowing why, to stop and rest, to shift direction. This doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It means releasing rigidity. It means replacing the question, what should I do with what is arising now? It means feeling your way forward, rather than forcing your way through. The wind reminds us that motion does not require maps. That expression does not need permission. That we, too, can live guided not by fear, but by flow. So, the next time you feel lost, uncertain, untethered, don't panic. Stand outside, feel the wind, let it move through you. And remember, you are not a problem to solve. You are a part of the sky, a breath of life, a whisper of movement. You do not need to know where you are going to be free. You only need to stop resisting the current and trust that something deeper is carrying you, just as it carries the wind across the sky. In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and ancient trees, there lived an old woman named Amara. Her home was simple, a small wooden cottage with a slanted roof and a porch that creaked when you walked across it. Time had softened the edges of her life. Her hair was silver, her hands lined, her movements slow but deliberate. Each morning, before the sun rose, Amara would brew a pot of tea and sit beneath a large maple tree in her garden. She would sit for hours, listening not to voices or music, but to the gentle rustle of leaves, to the breath of wind, to the soft rhythm of the earth turning. The villagers called her the one who waits. No one knew exactly what she was waiting for, but she always seemed content. Children would wave at her on their way to school. Travelers would stop and ask her for directions or wisdom, and she would smile, pour them tea, and say very little. One autumn, as the trees began to turn, Amara's maple transformed into a canvas of golden fire, each leaf a small sun, each branch a burning poem. She watched it all, day by day, knowing that beauty and loss often arrive together. There was one leaf, though small, yellow, delicate, that clung to the highest branch long after the others had let go. Even when the wind shook the limbs and the rain fell cold, this leaf stayed. Amara began to watch it more closely. She made it part of her morning ritual. She'd sit with her tea, look up at the stubborn little leaf, and whisper gently, "Whenever you're ready." Days passed, then weeks. Winter crept in. The air sharpened. The branches grew bare and skeletal, but the yellow leaf still held on, a fragile flame in the gray sky. Amara began to feel a kinship with it. "I know how hard it is," she whispered one morning. "To loosen your grip, to release what has held you for so long." And she did know. She, too, had spent a lifetime holding on to people, to plans, to pain. There were memories she still visited, like rooms she couldn't bring herself to clean. There were stories she told herself, over and over, about who she had been and what might have been different. She had survived love and loss, laughter and grief, but beneath it all was a quiet longing for release, for rest, for the kind of peace that only comes when you stop fighting the wind. The leaf, she realized, was her mirror. Then, one morning, it was gone. She walked outside as usual, tea in hand, and looked up, but the yellow dot was no longer there. The branch stood empty, gently swaying. The sky was pale and silent, and Amara wept, not from sadness, but from the simple ache of witnessing surrender. The leaf hadn't fallen in protest. It hadn't broken or torn. It had simply let go. When the time was right, when the wind was soft, when it no longer needed to hold on. And in that release, Amara saw everything. She saw the way she had gripped her own life, the way she had measured her days by what she could keep, rather than what she could feel. She saw the faces of those she had loved, the ones who had drifted away, not in anger, but in the natural rhythm of time. She saw her younger self fierce, hopeful, afraid, and she reached out to her, silently saying, "You can rest now." That day, Amara didn't sit under the tree. She walked instead down the path behind her house, past the river, into the woods. She moved slowly, but with a sense of purpose, like someone finally answering a call they'd been hearing for years. She found a clearing where sunlight broke through the canopy in quiet beams. There, she sat, closed her eyes, placed her hands on the ground, and she breathed, not to accomplish anything, not to fix or change or understand, but to feel what it was like to be here, without clinging, to exist without expectation, to live like the leaf open, surrendered, part of something larger than herself. That was the beginning of her freedom. She didn't stop missing what had been. She didn't stop remembering, but she no longer tried to hold it. She let the past visit like an old friend, not one who stayed too long, but one who came with stories and left with peace. The villagers noticed the change. Her smile became softer, her eyes lighter. She still brewed tea, still sat by the tree. But now, when people asked what she was waiting for, she would say, "I'm not waiting anymore. I'm listening." And what she heard was life, pure, unscripted life. The wind through the trees, the laughter of children, the silence between thoughts, the sacred pause after an exhale. One afternoon, a little girl came running to her with a yellow leaf in her hand. "Look," she said, beaming. "I found this. Isn't it pretty?" Amara took the leaf gently, cradled it like a treasure. "It's very special," she said. "Why?" "Because it knows when to let go." The girl didn't fully understand, but she smiled and nodded, happy to have pleased the old woman. Amara kept that leaf. She pressed it into the pages of a book she had never written, not because she needed to remember, but because it had become a part of her story, a symbol of all the things we eventually release, our roles, our expectations, our illusions of control, our resistance to change, and in that letting go, not a loss, but a return to the ground beneath us, to the wind above us, to the stillness within us. That is what the yellow leaf taught her, and it can teach us, too, because we all hold on to identities that no longer serve us, to relationships that ask us to shrink, to narratives of not enoughness, to the fear of what might happen if we surrender. But what if surrender is not the end? What if it's the beginning of a life not built on control, but on trust, not on holding, but on allowing? What if you, like the leaf, are already ripe with wisdom, and all that's left is the letting go? This is not something you force. It's something you listen for, a quiet readiness, a whisper in the wind. And when it comes, you'll know. You'll feel the shift, the unclenching, the exhale, and you, too, will fall not into emptiness, but into freedom, into the arms of life itself. Healing is not a straight line. It's not a checklist, not a race, not something to accomplish and move on from. Healing, in its truest form, is a return, a slow, quiet journey back to the part of you that was never broken, the part beneath the wounds, beneath the noise, beneath the stories you've been told and have told yourself. And that journey, while often painful, is one of the most sacred things you can offer yourself, because no one else can walk it for you, and no one else can take it away. It begins, not with effort, but with awareness, a soft noticing, a whisper in the stillness. I'm tired of running from myself. That's where it starts, not with grand decisions, not with sudden change, but with a moment, one breath, one truth allowed to surface. Maybe it's the realization that you've been busy for years, not because life demanded it, but because stillness scared you. Maybe it's the moment you finally admit you're grieving something you never gave yourself permission to grieve. Maybe it's a quiet Sunday afternoon when your body exhaled in a way you didn't know it needed to, and you felt, for a split second, what it might be like to come home to yourself. That's the door. That's how it opens. Not with force, but with honesty. The journey inward is unlike any other. There are no maps, no set timeline, no universal path. It is uniquely yours, shaped by your breath, your memories, your tenderness, your pain. And yet, there are certain truths that meet us all along the way. One of them is this: healing begins when we stop trying to be someone else's version of whole. We live in a culture that confuses perfection with worth, that tells us healing should look like smiling more, doing more, achieving more. That once we're healed, we'll never feel sadness or fear again. But real healing is not about becoming invincible. It's about becoming real. It's about peeling away the layers of armor you built to survive and learning to live without them. Not because they were wrong, but because they are no longer needed. Your anxiety. It once protected you. Your silence. It once kept you safe. Your people-pleasing. It was how you belonged. But now Now you are being invited into something deeper. A life that doesn't ask you to perform, but to feel. A self that doesn't demand perfection, but presence. The journey of healing asks us to sit with what we've avoided, to touch the grief we've buried, to hear the parts of us we've silenced. And in that listening, something shifts, something softens. We begin to remember that our pain is not an enemy. It's a messenger. It carries stories we never told, feelings we never honored, needs we never named. When you stop running from your pain, it stops chasing you, and instead, it begins to speak. It tells you where you're still holding tension, where you're still bracing for impact, where your younger self is still waiting to be held. The healing journey is not linear, because you are not linear. You are a forest, a river, a night sky full of stars. You are layers and seasons and rhythms. Some days will feel like breakthroughs, others like collapse. Both are sacred. Both are movement. There will be days when you feel wide open, soft, clear, connected. And there will be days when the fog returns, when the old patterns whisper again. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. And healing is human work. It is not about arriving at some distant place where nothing hurts. It is about learning to stay with yourself when it does. To say, even now, I will not abandon you. That is the deepest medicine. Presence, not fixing, not rushing, not numbing, just being with kindness. You may cry more. That's good. It means your body is releasing what words could not. You may rest more. That's healing. It means your system is recalibrating. You may outgrow people, places, ideas. That's clarity. It means you're making space for what truly nourishes. Along the way, you may find practices that anchor you, a breath that calms, a walk that clears, a journal that receives, a meditation that holds. You may discover the quiet joy of doing nothing and realizing that in that stillness, you are already enough. And slowly, you'll notice changes, not the kind that make headlines, but the kind that shift everything. You'll speak more truth. Even if your voice shakes, you'll choose rest. Even if others don't understand, you'll say no, without guilt. You'll meet your reflection with softness, not critique. You'll begin to trust life again, not because it's predictable, but because you no longer need it to be. That is the beauty of healing from within. It doesn't depend on the world changing. It depends on your relationship with yourself changing. You stop asking the outside to fill what only presence can. And in that shift, you become your own sanctuary, your own healer. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned to listen, to be with, to return. And if there are moments when it all feels too much, when the weight resurfaces, when the ache returns, pause, place a hand on your heart, and whisper this, too, belongs, because it does. Your pain, your joy, your questions, your messiness, all of it is part of your becoming, and you are not behind. You are not broken. You are blooming in your own time, in your own way, like a tree finding its roots, like water remembering how to flow, like a soul that is finally, quietly, coming home. You don't have to be perfect. Let that settle for a moment. Let it land not as a pretty idea, but as truth, not as a slogan to repeat, but as a doorway into something deeper. You don't have to always have it together. You don't have to smile when your heart is aching. You don't have to be strong all the time, productive every day, or kind in every moment. You are allowed to be human in a world that praises polish, perfection, and constant progress. It's easy to forget that being alive was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be felt fully, messily, imperfectly. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that in order to be loved, we had to be flawless, that mistakes made us unworthy, that emotions made us weak, that vulnerability was something to be fixed, not honored. But that story is a lie. The truth is, imperfection is not your flaw. It's your fingerprint. It's the way your voice shakes when you speak your truth, the tears that rise when you finally exhale, the scars that remind you of what you've survived, the uncertainty that keeps you soft, questioning, alive. Perfection is a mask we wear when we're afraid of rejection, afraid of being seen, afraid that if we showed up exactly as we are unfiltered, uncurated, unfinished, no one would stay. But the people who are meant to love you, they are not looking for perfect. They are looking for real, for presence, for honesty, for the courage to say, I'm still learning. And that begins with you, with how you meet yourself when you fall short, when you say the wrong thing, when you break your own heart, when you don't know what's next. Can you offer yourself kindness? Not the conditional kind. I'll be kind once I fix this, but the radical kind, I'm worthy of love. Even here, that is the practice. That is the work. To stop turning every flaw into a project. To stop measuring your value by how close you are to some imaginary ideal. To stop postponing your peace until you finally become someone better. Because there is no version of you more deserving of gentleness than the one you are right now. You are allowed to be a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. You are allowed to be healing and worthy of love in the same breath. You are allowed to be growing and still unsure. What if the goal is not to get it all right, but to show up anyway? What if your stumbling is holy? What if your softness is strength? What if your honesty is the most beautiful thing about you? I once met a man named Elijah, who told me he spent most of his life trying to be good. He followed the rules, said all the right things, excelled at his job. He was praised for his composure, his leadership, his discipline. But inside, he was exhausted. He told me, I've built my life like a fortress, neat, clean, controlled, and I'm lonely inside it. It wasn't until his son, at age 8, told him, Dad, I don't think you ever make mistakes, that he realized something was off. It hit me. Elijah said, he doesn't see my humanity because I don't let him. So Elijah began small. He started saying, I don't know. When he didn't know, he apologized when he snapped. He let himself cry once, just once in front of his son, who looked confused, and then hugged him tighter than ever. That hug changed everything, because it wasn't about weakness. It was about connection, and connection lives in the space where perfection ends, where masks come off, where hearts open. Your imperfections are not in the way of love. They are the bridge to it. When you stop trying to appear perfect, You give others permission to be whole. You create space for authenticity, for depth, for belonging. Not the kind of belonging that comes from fitting in, but the kind that says, "Come as you are." There's room for all of you here. You are not lovable because you never fall. You are lovable because you rise again and again with honesty. You are not lovable because you are always calm. You are lovable because you stay when things get hard. You are not lovable because you never struggle. You are lovable because you allow yourself to be seen struggle and all. There is a Japanese art called kintsugi, the practice of mending broken pottery with gold instead of hiding the cracks. It highlights them. The brokenness becomes part of the beauty. That's what healing looks like. Not erasing your flaws, but embracing them. Not hiding the breaks, but honoring them. Because each one tells a story of resilience, of survival, of choosing to continue. You don't have to be perfect. You never did. You just have to be present. To be honest, to be willing to start again, to be open to being loved not for your image, but for your essence. And the truth is, you already are. Even in your mess, even in your questions, even in your becoming. So the next time you feel like you failed, remember this: the moon is still whole. Even when it's only a sliver, the ocean is still vast. Even when it's calm, and you are still enough. Even when you're uncertain, let that be your truth. Let it be your freedom. Let it be the breath that carries you back to yourself, again and again. There is only one place where life ever truly happens: the present moment. Not yesterday, with its tangled stories and unresolved echoes. Not tomorrow, with its promises and fears and imagined control. But right here, right now, in this breath, this step, this heartbeat. Mindfulness is the practice of remembering that. It's not about doing more. It's not about getting calm or becoming a monk. It's about noticing. It's about waking up again and again to the life that's unfolding right in front of you. The life that doesn't wait for you to be perfect. The life that keeps moving. Even when you're distracted, mindfulness says, come back to your body, to your breath, to what's real, not what's imagined. It's simple, but not always easy. We live in a world designed to pull us away from the present. Notifications, comparisons, deadlines, noise. Our minds are constantly rehearsing the future or replaying the past. We miss entire days, entire years, waiting for something different, better, safer. But peace is not hiding in the next achievement. It's in the inhale you forgot to feel, the cup of tea that went cold in your hand, the smile you barely noticed, the quiet between thoughts. That's where life is. That's where you are. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to change your life. It asks you to show up for it, as it is, as you are. And when you do, when you really do it, changes everything. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more present for it, more grounded, more awake, more compassionate, more real. I once met a man named Jorge, who had spent years chasing success. He built a business, bought a house, traveled the world, but he came to me with a simple confession. I feel like I missed it all, like I've been asleep at the wheel. So we practiced sitting, breathing, doing nothing. At first, he was restless. This is hard. He said, "My mind won't shut up." "Good." I told him. "That means you're paying attention?" It took weeks, but one morning, he came in and said, "I watched the sun rise today. I just watched it. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was really there. That's it. That's the shift. Not dramatic, but real. Mindfulness brings us home. Home to our breath. Home to our senses. Home to the body we keep abandoning. Home to the moment we keep missing. And in that homecoming, we begin to see differently. We see that the mind's stories are just that, stories, not facts, not truths, just habits of thought. We see that pain is not something to run from, but something to meet with softness, with breath, with presence. We see that joy is not in things, but in attention. That wonder is not for children. It's for anyone who's willing to slow down. Try this. Sit for 5 minutes and notice your breath. Not to control it, but to feel it. Inhale, feel the rise. Exhale, feel the fall. Thoughts will come. That's okay. They're not the problem. Just return, again and again, to the breath, to the body, to this. Or walk slowly, without a destination. Feel your feet meet the earth. Feel the wind against your skin. Notice the colors, the textures, the movement around you. Noticing is enough. That's mindfulness. And the more you practice it, the more you begin to unhook from the need to fix or control everything. You stop needing the future to be perfect. You stop needing others to behave a certain way. You begin to rest, not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer resisting the moment. This is not apathy. This is deep engagement. This is intimacy with life. Mindfulness is not about zoning out. It's about tuning in. It's about becoming so present that even washing dishes becomes a sacred act. Even traffic becomes a chance to breathe. Even pain becomes a teacher. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes presence hurts. Sometimes it shows you the very things you've been avoiding. But it also shows you beauty you've missed for years, and peace that was always here, just buried under thought. The present moment is not always pretty, but it's always real. And realness is where healing begins. It's where connection begins. It's where you begin. So the next time your mind spirals into what-ifs and should-haves, pause. Place a hand on your chest. Feel the breath and whisper, "This is what's true right now." Let that be enough. Let it ground you. Let it remind you you are not your thoughts. You are not your to-do list. You're not behind. You're here, alive, breathing. And that is more than enough. That is everything. Mindfulness is not a task to master. It's a relationship to deepen. With yourself, with life, with this breath, this moment. And like any relationship, it grows with time, with attention, with love. So begin small. One breath, one step, one pause between tasks. That's all it takes. And slowly, you'll begin to notice the shift. The way anxiety loosens when you stop fighting. The way clarity returns when you stop overthinking. The way joy sneaks in, not with a bang, but with a whisper. You are allowed to be here. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to justify it. You just need to return, again and again, to now. Because this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this feeling is where your life actually is, and it is waiting for you to notice, not with judgment, but with open arms, Welcome back. Stillness. It sounds so gentle, so inviting. And yet, for many of us, it is one of the hardest things to touch. We live in a world that worships motion. We are taught to hustle, to move fast, to keep up. Productivity is praised. Action is admired. Noise is normalized. To pause, to sit, to do nothing that feels like falling behind. But beneath all that movement, there's a quiet truth we're often afraid to admit. We're not actually afraid of stillness itself. We're afraid of what it will reveal. Because in stillness, there's nowhere to hide. No tasks to distract us. No noise to drown us out. No performance to protect us. Stillness is the mirror that shows us who we really are not, who we pretend to be. It brings us face to face with the emotions we've been avoiding, the questions we've buried, the ache we've been covering with busyness. It's easy to stay distracted. It's harder to sit down and meet yourself. But that meeting, that's where your freedom begins. I once spoke with a woman named Claire who told me, I can do anything, run a business, raise kids, care for others, but ask me to sit quietly for 10 minutes, and I want to crawl out of my skin. We explored that feeling. And underneath her resistance, we found sadness, years of unprocessed grief from a life that had asked her to be strong, too many times, too early. The silence, she said, feels like it's going to swallow me. But it didn't. Once she sat through the discomfort, once she breathed through the restlessness, she discovered something surprising. The silence didn't want to hurt her. It wanted to hold her. Stillness, when welcomed gently, becomes a refuge, not a threat. So why are we so afraid? Because the pace we've normalized is unnatural. Because silence is unfamiliar. Because somewhere along the line, we started equating self-worth with achievement. We learned to measure our value by how much we do, how much we produce, how busy we are. But busyness is not the same as aliveness, and doing is not the same as being. Stillness invites us to return to being, to remember that we are not machines, that we do not exist solely to check boxes and meet deadlines. That life is not a ladder to climb, it's a space to be felt. When we slow down, we begin to feel, and feelings, especially the ones we've labeled bad or weak, can be overwhelming. That's why many people think meditation is about clearing the mind, but it's not. It's about making space for what's already there. It's about noticing the breath, noticing the tension in your jaw, noticing the loop of thoughts that plays when you're tired, and noticing that you are more than those thoughts, that you can sit with them, that you can breathe with them, that you can hold space for your own experience without needing to fix it. That is the real power of stillness. It doesn't remove the storm. It teaches you how to sit in the center of it with grace. There's a story from the Zen tradition about a student who asked his master, "What should I do when I feel overwhelmed with thoughts during meditation?" The master replied, "Let them come. Let them go. Just don't serve them tea. That's the essence of it." Stillness doesn't mean you'll never think. It means you stop letting every thought pull you into its drama. You become the witness, not the actor. You find space, and in that space, you find peace. But peace doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it begins as discomfort, as boredom, as resistance, that's okay. You're not doing it wrong. You're just waking up. You're feeling what has long been numbed. You're hearing what has long been silenced. And that's brave. That's sacred. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel restless. It's okay to sit in silence and not know what to do. Just stay. Just breathe. One moment at a time. And slowly, gently, you'll begin to feel something shift, not outside, but within. You'll begin to realize that you don't need to earn your rest, that you don't need to justify your pause. That being still is not laziness. It's wisdom. Because in stillness, you reconnect with your breath, with your body, with your truth, with a part of you that is not anxious, not striving, not performing, the part of you that simply is. And that part, it's always been there, waiting, quietly, patiently, beneath the noise, beneath the expectations, beneath the fear. So ask yourself gently, what am I afraid I'll feel if I stop and then sit with that question? Not to answer it, but to let it open you. You don't need to fix your fear. You just need to meet it with kindness, with breath, with presence. Because the real gift of stillness is not the absence of fear. It's the presence of self. The self that doesn't need to prove anything. The self that is already whole, already enough, already home. So next time you feel that resistance to slow down, to sit, to breathe, remember this. You are not resisting stillness. You are resisting what stillness will show you. And that's okay. But don't let that stop you. Because on the other side of that resistance is something precious, a spaciousness, a softness, a coming home, not to a perfect version of yourself, but to the truest one, the one who doesn't need to be busy to belong, the one who doesn't need to achieve to matter, the one who knows that life is not something to conquer, it's something to feel. And stillness is how you feel it, fully, deeply, honestly. So come back to the breath, to the pause, to the silence. Not because you should, but because it's safe here, because you are safe here, and because in this quiet space you remember who you were before the noise, before the roles, before the masks. You remember yourself, and that memory, that's where the healing begins. In a small coastal village where the sea whispered to the shore and the wind carried the scent of salt and pine, there lived a boy named Elias. Elias was curious, always asking questions, always tinkering with things. His favorite possession was a pocket watch passed down from his grandfather, a small, golden piece with intricate hands and a quiet tick that once seemed to match the rhythm of his heart. But one day, the watch stopped ticking. He tried everything he knew. He shook it gently. He wound the knob. He opened the back, even though he wasn't sure what he was looking at. Still, silence. The watch, once alive with time, now rested cold and still in his palm. Frustrated, Elias ran to the village clockmaker, an old man named Lyndon who lived in a shop that smelled of dust and oil and time itself. Lyndon examined the watch, peered through his thick glasses, and smiled softly. "It's not broken," he said, "but it won't move." Elias protested. "It will," the old man replied. "When it's ready?" Elias frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Can't you fix it now?" Lyndon shook his head. "It doesn't need fixing. It needs rest." Elias didn't understand. But he took the watch home anyway. Each morning, he checked it. Still nothing. He listened for the tick. He pressed it to his ear. Silence. Days passed. Weeks. Elias grew impatient. He began to doubt the clockmaker's words. Maybe it was broken. Maybe it would never tick again. Maybe stillness meant death. One afternoon, his restlessness bubbled over. He took the watch to the rocks by the sea and held it up to the sun, as if demanding an answer. "Why won't you work?" he shouted into the wind. "What are you waiting for?" The waves answered with their usual rhythm. The seagulls cried overhead. The wind ran through his hair, offering nothing but its gentle presence. He sat, tired, frustrated. And then, for the first time since the watch had stopped, he stopped too. He stopped asking, stopped fixing, stopped resisting, and just sat. He listened to the ocean, to his breath, to the silence. And something strange happened. He began to feel calm. The kind of calm he hadn't felt in a long time. Not because something was solved, but because he had finally surrendered. He looked down at the watch in his hand, not expecting anything, but then tick. A single sound, quiet, steady, alive, then another, and another. The watch was ticking, not because he forced it, but because he had finally allowed it. Elias stared, wide-eyed, not with triumph, but with awe. The watch hadn't needed fixing. It had needed stillness, just like him. He ran to the clockmaker's shop, breathless with wonder. "It's working," he said. "You were right." Lyndon nodded, unsurprised. "Of course it is. Some things don't respond to effort. They respond to patience." Elias looked at the watch differently now, not as a tool for measuring time, but as a teacher. He began to understand what Lyndon had meant. Stillness is not failure. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is the womb of it, the space where healing happens, where clarity returns, where what is meant to unfold finally can. So many of us are like Elias, rushing, fixing, pushing, trying to force life to tick the way we want. But some things, grief, love, growth cannot be hurried. They move on their own time. And when we try to control them, we only tighten the knot. Meditation is not about making something happen. It's about creating space. It's about sitting down, like Elias by the sea, and allowing the watch to wake up on its own. The truth is, you're not broken. You're unfolding, and stillness is part of that unfolding. It's not a pause in your life story. It's a chapter in it, one that holds wisdom, depth, and quiet rebirth. There's a reason the ocean returns to stillness between waves, a reason the forest grows in silence, a reason the heart rests between beats. Stillness is not empty. It's full of life you haven't learned to hear yet. The ticking of your own being, the breath beneath your thoughts, the rhythm of your deeper self, waiting to be remembered. When Elias sat on the rocks, he didn't solve the watch. He surrendered to the moment. And in that surrender, the watch found its rhythm again. So can you. You don't need to figure everything out today. You don't need to force your healing. You don't need to perform peace to earn rest. You just need to sit, to listen, to be, and slowly, gently, like a watch waking from sleep, your life begins to move again, not from pressure, but from presence. Elias never forgot the lesson. Years later, he became a teacher, not of math or science, but of stillness. He would sit with children in a quiet room, eyes closed, breath steady, and tell them. Some things fix themselves when you stop trying to fix them. And they would sit, fidget at first, then settle, and somewhere between restlessness and quiet, they would begin to hear the tick of something deeper, their own inner rhythm, their own unfolding, their own watch, waiting only for their stillness. There is a doorway within you that opens every moment, whether you notice it or not, a rhythm that carries you from moment to moment, from fear to calm, from thought to silence. That doorway is your breath. Simple, constant, often overlooked, but profoundly alive. The breath is the most faithful companion you have. From the moment you entered this world, gasping with your first inhale, to the moment you take your last gentle exhale, it will never leave your side. And yet, how often do we truly feel it? How often do we pause and honor it? The breath is not just a biological function. It's a bridge between body and mind, between tension and release, between noise and stillness. It's the anchor we're all born with, but rarely trained to use. When life gets overwhelming, when thoughts spiral, when emotions run high, the breath is already there, offering a path home, not through force, not through fixing, but through presence. Close your eyes for a moment. Inhale slowly through your nose. Feel the rise in your chest, the expansion in your belly. Now exhale gently. Feel your body soften, your shoulders drop, your mind quiet. Nothing fancy, nothing mystical, just breath. And yet everything shifts. The breath is where the body speaks to the mind without words. It says, "You are safe. You are here. There is no emergency right now." In many ancient traditions, breath is more than oxygen. It's spirit. In Sanskrit, it's called prana, the vital life force. In Chinese, qi. In Latin, spiritus. All point to the same truth. Breath is aliveness itself. But modern life pulls us away from it. We live in a culture of shallow breathing, chest level, rushed, disconnected. Stress shortens the breath. Fear constricts it. Distraction makes us forget it. And so we drift away from our bodies, away from the moment, into the fog of thought. But when we return to the breath, we return to truth. Because the breath doesn't lie. It doesn't dwell in the past. It doesn't worry about the future. It only knows now. Right now. That's where its power lies. And when we train ourselves to follow it, to feel it fully, we awaken something ancient within us. The body begins to unwind. The mind begins to settle. The heart begins to open. In meditation, the breath is often the first object of focus. Not because it's exciting, but because it's always available, always trustworthy, always enough. Try this. Next time you feel overwhelmed, stop. Place one hand on your belly, one on your heart. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 6. Repeat this 3 times. Notice the shift. This isn't magic. It's nervous system regulation. The breath speaks directly to your body's stress response. It tells the brain we're okay. It tells the muscles you can release now. It tells the heart you are held. Over time, breath awareness becomes more than a tool. It becomes a way of being. You begin to walk through life not as a head disconnected from a body, but as a whole being, rooted in each inhale and exhale. You notice the way emotions ride the breath. Anger arrives with shortness, sadness with weight, joy with lightness. You notice how your breath changes when you speak, when you listen, when you lie to yourself, when you tell the truth. And this noticing becomes your superpower. It helps you pause before you react. It helps you soften instead of harden. It helps you come home when you've drifted. Because you will drift. We all do. But the breath is the path back, and it's always patient, always forgiving, like a quiet friend who waits at the edge of your chaos, saying, "I'm still here," in times of crisis, when everything feels out of control. Breath is your first medicine. In times of joy, when life swells with meaning, breath deepens the experience. In times of grief, when the world feels hollow, breath is the gentle reminder you are still alive, and life, no matter how fragile, how painful, how uncertain, is still worth breathing for. I once guided a woman named Leah through her first meditation. She'd lost her partner a year prior and carried her grief like armor, quiet, heavy, untouchable. "I don't want to feel it," she said. "I'm afraid I'll drown." So we started with breath. 5 minutes, just sitting, just breathing. At first, she resisted. Then she wept. Not because the breath brought more pain, but because it made space for what was already there. Afterward, she told me, "I didn't drown. I floated." That's the breath's gift. It doesn't remove your sorrow. It holds you through it. It reminds you that your body is capable of surviving deep feeling, that your soul can breathe even in mourning, that you can stay with yourself with compassion. And in staying, healing begins, not through fixing, but through presence. So the next time you feel lost, anxious, disconnected, don't reach for something outside. Reach inward, to the breath. Feel it, trust it, let it lead you home. Because the breath is not just air, it's awareness, it's aliveness, it's a bridge that has been waiting all this time to carry you back to yourself. When people first sit down to meditate, they often ask the same questions. Am I doing this right? Why can't I stop thinking? How do I make my mind go quiet? And beneath those questions is one very human impulse to try to be still, to try to be calm, to try to be spiritual. But here's the paradox. The more you try in meditation, the further you drift from its essence. Because meditation is not about effort. It's about surrender. Not in a passive way, but in a profound, conscious way. To sit down and say, I am willing to stop controlling. I am willing to be here as I am. That is the beginning of real practice. We are so used to striving. We strive to succeed, to improve, to fix, to achieve. Even in our healing, we try to do it right. But meditation asks something different. It says, stop doing, just be, not as a command, but as an invitation. And that invitation can feel foreign, even threatening at first, because doing gives us a sense of control. Letting go asks us to trust. It's no surprise that when most people sit down to meditate, their first instinct is to control the mind, grip the breath, suppress thoughts, achieve stillness. But the mind doesn't respond well to force. It responds to presence, to gentleness, to attention. Imagine a restless dog. If you chase it, it runs. If you yell, it barks. But if you sit quietly, patiently, it might come. Sit beside you. Your mind is the same. So let's shift the question. Instead of asking, how do I make this work? Ask, what would it feel like to simply allow this moment to be what it is? Allow the thoughts. Allow the body. Allow the breath. Allow the discomfort. You don't need to like it. You don't need to fix it. Just sit with it. With curiosity. With compassion. With no goal but to stay present. And slowly, something changes. Not because you made it change, but because you stopped interfering. The breath softens. The body releases. The mind begins to settle. Not because it was forced to, but because it was met with kindness. This is the art of letting go. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in to what already is. Surrender is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the recognition that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from intimacy with the present. When you let go of the need to meditate correctly, you make space for true meditation to arise, not as a technique, but as a way of being. I once had a student named Jay who came to class with a checklist. I want to meditate every day. He said, I want to get better at it. I want to be calm. He was sincere, disciplined, focused, but he was also tense, frustrated. Every time I sit, he said, my thoughts get louder. So I gave him a new instruction. Don't try to meditate. Just sit and breathe. Let whatever happens, happen. He looked skeptical, but he tried. And the next week, he came back different. He said, I didn't feel calm, but I felt honest. And somehow, that was enough. That's the shift. When you stop chasing calm, you make room for truth. And truth, however raw, however messy, is the foundation of real peace. Letting go means letting go of the outcome. Letting go of the idea that you need to get somewhere, that this moment needs to be different, that you need to be different. It means trusting that whatever arises, whether boredom or joy or grief, is part of the path. And when you stop resisting, you start receiving. You receive your breath, not as a project, but as a gift. You receive your thoughts not as enemies, but as visitors. You receive yourself not as something to be improved, but as someone to be held. Meditation is not a fix. It's a friendship with the self. It doesn't ask you to transcend your humanity. It asks you to embrace it, to sit with it, to breathe with it, and to discover that beneath the noise, beneath the effort, beneath the trying, there is something spacious, still, whole, and it was never gone. You were just looking too hard. So next time you sit, try this. Don't try. Just notice. Just allow. Let the breath breathe itself. Let the thoughts come and go. Let the moment unfold. And trust that is enough. Before you begin, find a quiet place, somewhere you can sit without distraction. You don't need perfect silence. You don't need incense or cushions. Just yourself, and a willingness to listen, not to the world outside, but to the stillness within. Let's begin. Minute 1. Sit comfortably. Let your spine be tall, but not rigid. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands rest gently on your lap or knees. Now close your eyes or keep them soft, unfocused. take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Let the breath fall naturally. You don't need to control it. You don't need to force it. Just feel it. Rising, falling, like waves meeting the shore. Minute 2. Now bring your attention to the sounds around you, without labeling, without judging. Just notice. Maybe there's the hum of a fan, a distant voice, the chirp of a bird, or even the sound of silence. Let all of it be okay. You're not trying to block anything out. You're learning to listen, deeply, gently. Minute 3. Begin to shift your awareness inward. Notice the rhythm of your breath. Feel the inhale as it enters your nose, travels down your throat, fills your chest. Feel the exhale as it leaves, slowly, naturally. Breathing in, you arrive. Breathing out, you let go. Nothing to fix, nothing to figure out. Just here. Just now. Minute 4. Bring attention to your body. Start at the top of your head. Soften your forehead. Unclench your jaw. Relax your neck. Drop your shoulders. Let your arms feel heavy. Let your chest stay open. Feel your belly rise with each inhale, fall with each exhale. Soften your hips. Feel the ground beneath you. Let your legs relax. Let your feet rest. This is your body. Right here, right now, holding you, breathing with you. Minute 5. Now, listen deeper. Not just to sound, but to space, to silence. Silence is not empty. It's alive. It holds everything. All sound arises from silence. All thoughts pass through silence. Silence is not the absence of life. It's the presence of stillness. Can you feel it? Not as an idea, but as a sensation, a space beneath all doing, a quiet that's always been there, even when you were too busy to hear it. Minute 6. Let your thoughts come. You're not here to stop thinking. You're here to observe. Like clouds passing in the sky, they come, they go. Let them pass. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky that holds them. Breathe. Return to silence. Again and again. Minute 7. Now bring a question into your awareness. What would it feel like to trust this moment completely? Not tomorrow. Not yesterday. Just this. Right here. Right now. Let the question rest in your heart. You don't need an answer. Let the silence respond in its own way. Through stillness, through breath, through being. Minute 8. Place one hand on your heart, the other on your belly. Feel the warmth. Feel the movement of breath. Say quietly in your mind, I am here. I am safe. I am held. Repeat gently, with love, with sincerity. Let your whole body receive the message. Let silence become not just around you, but within you. Minute 9. Now listen again, not with your ears, but with your whole being, to what's underneath the noise, to the space between sounds, to the stillness between breaths. You are listening not just for quiet. You are listening for presence, and presence is always here, always waiting, always welcoming. Minute 10. As we near the end of this practice, begin to return slowly. Wiggle your fingers, move your shoulders, take a deep, slow breath in, and exhale with a sigh. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. Look around. The room hasn't changed, but maybe you have. Maybe you've remembered something ancient. That silence is not empty. That breath is sacred. That stillness is a home you can return to anytime. This practice is yours. You can repeat it daily, or simply return to it whenever life feels too loud. Because no matter what's happening outside, silence remains within. It's not something you create. It's something you uncover. Beneath the doing, beneath the trying, beneath the noise. It's always there, waiting for you to hear it. Meditation is simple, but it's often misunderstood. People hear the word and immediately imagine a monk on a mountain, eyes closed, untouched by thought or emotion. They imagine silence so deep it swallows all noise, peace so profound it erases every ounce of struggle. And so, when they try to sit, and their mind keeps racing, they think I'm doing this wrong. Let's begin there with the first and perhaps biggest misunderstanding. 1. Meditation means stopping all thoughts. No, it doesn't. The mind thinks. That's what it does. Meditation is not about silencing the mind. It's about noticing it without being pulled into every thought. You are not trying to create a blank screen. You are learning to sit behind the screen and watch what plays. Without identifying with every scene, thoughts will come. Let them. But instead of reacting, you simply return again and again to the breath, to the body, to presence. Over time, you become less entangled. Thoughts may still come, but they don't carry you away. That's not failure. That's freedom. 2. I need to sit in a specific posture to do it right. You do not need to twist into a lotus pose or sit like a statue. Meditation is about connection, not performance. You can sit on a chair, a cushion, a bench, even lie down if needed. The key is to find a posture that's relaxed yet alert, one where your body feels supported and your breath flows freely. The outer form is less important than the inner attitude. Comfort helps, yes, but what matters more is presence. 3. If I feel restless, I must not be good at meditating. Restlessness is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of awareness. When you stop distracting yourself, all the stored tension, impatience, and emotion begin to rise. That's part of the process. You're not more broken than others. You're just more honest now. Sitting still doesn't create restlessness. It reveals it. And revelation is the beginning of healing. So, when restlessness appears, meet it with kindness. Say, "Ah, here you are." And stay. 4. I have to meditate for hours for it to count. Even 1 minute matters. Even a single breath taken with awareness matters. You don't need to climb a mountain of discipline to access peace. You only need to pause consistently. Start small. 1 minute in the morning, 3 minutes before a meeting, 5 breaths before sleep. It's not about duration. It's about depth. And depth comes with practice, not pressure. 5. Meditation is about escaping reality. Actually, it's the opposite. Meditation is the practice of facing reality fully, gently, and without distraction. It's not about floating away. It's about arriving here, now, with what's real. That includes joy and pain, noise and silence, ease and discomfort. You don't leave your life behind to meditate. You return to it, more awake. 6. I'm too anxious to meditate. Anxiety is one of the best reasons to meditate, not because it will instantly erase your fear, but because it teaches you how to sit with fear differently. You learn to feel anxiety in the body-tight chest, racing heart without feeding the mind stories about it. You learn to breathe with it, not run from it. And slowly, the anxiety loosens its grip not by force, but by familiarity. Meditation doesn't get rid of fear. It builds your capacity to hold it. 7. I need a calm environment to meditate. You don't need silence to find silence within. Sure, a peaceful space helps. But life is rarely quiet. Children cry, cars honk, dogs bark, emotions flare. That's okay. Meditation is not about perfect conditions. It's about learning to stay with yourself, even in chaos. So if you can breathe in the noise, sit in the mess, and still return to yourself, you are practicing the deepest form of meditation, because the real temple is within you. 8. I'm supposed to feel something profound. Sometimes you will. A sense of peace, a deep breath, a subtle clarity. Other times, you'll feel bored, restless, even annoyed. That's okay. Meditation is not a performance. It's a practice. You don't sit to feel a certain way. You sit to feel whatever is true, and that truth changes daily. Sometimes the shift is subtle. Sometimes it's invisible, but it's always there. 9. Meditation is not for people like me. Meditation is for humans, not just monks or mystics, not just the calm or spiritual. It's for the anxious, the overthinkers, the tired, the curious, the grieving, the joyful. It's for anyone willing to pause and meet themselves. There is no mold to fit. There is only your breath and the invitation to return again and again. 10. I failed. I gave up. I can't do it. There's no such thing as failure in meditation, only returning. Again, and again, and again. Every time you come back, even after weeks or months, you're not starting over. You're continuing. You're remembering. You're practicing the deepest truth of meditation. That presence is always available. That silence never leaves you. That home is always one breath away. So let go of the myths. Let go of the pressure. Let go of the idea that you must become someone else. You are already enough, exactly as you are. Just sit, just breathe, just be, and let the practice unfold not perfectly, but honestly. That honesty, that's meditation. There's a truth that follows us like a shadow, present in every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of life. Everything changes, everything. We know this, and yet we resist it. We cling to what we love. We try to hold on to certainty. We plan, predict, prepare, trying to build walls around the fleeting. But life was never meant to be still. It was meant to flow, to rise and fall, to begin and end, to appear, shimmer, and disappear like morning light on water. This truth that everything changes is called impermanence. And though it may sound like a reason to despair, it is, in fact, the beginning of freedom. Because when we stop resisting change, we start living fully. When we embrace impermanence, we begin to see clearly that pain doesn't last forever, that joy must be cherished, that we ourselves are not fixed but unfolding. Consider the breath. Each inhale is a birth. Each exhale is a letting go. We do not hold the breath. We receive it. We release it. And in that rhythm, life continues. Try holding your breath. Try stopping change. You'll find that resistance is not strength, it's suffering, but surrender. That's where ease lives. Not in giving up, but in opening up. Opening to what is, as it is, without grasping, without forcing, without needing it to be something else. There's a story of a teacher who held a beautiful vase, and a student asked, "Aren't you afraid of breaking it?" The teacher smiled and said, "It's already broken." Not because it was broken yet, but because he understood impermanence, and in that understanding, he loved the vase more, not less. He drank in its beauty, its shape, its presence, knowing it would not last. He didn't fear its loss. He honored its life. That's the shift impermanence invites us into. From fear to reverence, from clinging to cherishing, from control to appreciation. When we accept that everything changes, we stop wasting energy on what we cannot hold, and we start showing up for what we can. We hold hands a little longer. We speak truth a little sooner. We forgive a little easier, because we know this moment will not return. Impermanence is not a thief, it's a teacher. It asks us to wake up, to stop sleepwalking through life, to stop numbing, avoiding, delaying, to feel the beauty in the now. And yes, it also asks us to feel the ache of endings. But even that ache is sacred, because it means we loved, we cared, we were present. And isn't that what it means to be alive? To open our hearts fully, even when they might break. To say yes to the sunrise, knowing it will fade. To dance while the music plays. To whisper thank you to each chapter. Even as we turn the page, change is not the enemy. It is the very nature of reality. The seasons know this. The moon knows this. The cells in your body know this. So why do we resist? Because we want to feel safe. Because we think permanence equals peace. But what if peace isn't found in what stays the same? What if it's found in learning to flow, to trust, to meet each moment with open hands? This doesn't mean we become passive. It means we become wise. We love deeply, but without chains. We plan, but with flexibility. We grieve, but without drowning. We live, but without illusion. There's a kind of strength that comes from embracing impermanence, not the strength of control, but the strength of surrender, of softening, of staying open when life changes shape. It's the strength of a tree in the wind, rooted, yet flexible. The strength of water, fluid, yet unstoppable. The strength of presence, awake, yet unafraid. So how do we practice this? We start small. We notice the little changes. The sky shifting color, the sound of a child's laugh, the taste of a meal that won't come again. And we whisper, this too is sacred. This too is passing. We begin to let go, not as loss, but as love. We begin to loosen the grip, not because we don't care, but because we care so deeply. We're willing to feel it all, even the letting go, even the goodbye, even the unknown. That's what embracing change really means. It means choosing presence over permanence. It means showing up to life, not despite its impermanence, but because of it. It means trusting that what flows away makes space for what's next, and that every ending contains the seed of something new. So let the wave rise. Let the tide shift. Let the leaf fall, not with fear, but with reverence. This is life, and it's beautiful. Not because it stays, but because it moves, because it breathes, because it teaches us, again and again, how to let go and how to begin. There is a river running through everything, through time, through nature, through your body, through your thoughts. It never stops. It never holds. It never looks back. This river is change. It is flow. It is the quiet, unshakable truth that nothing, absolutely nothing, stays the same. And yet, how often do we live as though it does? We try to keep things just as they are. We cling to moments, to people, to identities, hoping they will not slip away. But life is not a still pond. It is movement, unfolding, dissolving, becoming. The Greeks called it panta. Everything flows. The Buddha taught anicca, all is impermanent. Science confirms it, your body, your cells, your breath. Even the stars are in constant transformation. The illusion of permanence is just that, an illusion, and the longer we hold on to it, the more we suffer. But when we remember the truth of flow, we soften. We stop fighting the current. We begin to float. Look around. The tree you see today is not the tree it was yesterday. It has lost a leaf, gained a cell, shifted in sunlight. Your body is not the body you woke up with last week. Your thoughts are not the same thoughts from this morning. Everything flows. When we accept this, not just in theory, but in our bones, something in us relaxes. We stop trying to freeze life. We start to feel it, not as something to possess, but as something to participate in. This is not detachment, it's intimacy. Because what is more intimate than flowing with something, moment by moment? As it is, we begin to notice the beauty in transition, the magic of the in-between, the sacred pause between inhale and exhale, the hush between notes of music, the quiet just before the dawn. We begin to understand that life doesn't only happen at milestones. It happens in the motion, in the becoming, in the dance of arriving and leaving, of forming and dissolving. This perspective doesn't remove our pain, but it gives it context. The heartbreak you feel, it will shift. The joy you feel, it will pass, but not in a way that diminishes it, in a way that deepens it. Because when you know something won't last, you lean in closer, you listen more carefully, you love more deeply, you say thank you more often, you stop waiting for forever and start meeting what's here. This doesn't mean we don't grieve change. Of course we do. Change often hurts, even when it's for the better, even when it's needed, because every change is a kind of death, a letting go of what was, a stepping into the unknown. But grief is not the opposite of peace. It is part of it, a wave in the river, to be felt, to be honored, and then let go. Because the river keeps moving, and so do you. We often think of flow as soft, but there is strength in it. The ocean carves cliffs, rivers shape mountains, and time, flowing through your life, has made you who you are, not in spite of change, but because of it. Think of all the versions of yourself you've been: the child, the dreamer, the wounded one, the one who rose again. Each version flowed into the next, not as a loss, but as a becoming. You are not fixed. You are fluid. You are not a statue. You are a song. Let it play. Let it shift. Let it move through you. The more we resist flow, the more we suffer. We build dams in our minds. We try to keep things just so. And in doing so, we block the very force that gives us life. But when we open the gates, when we allow the river to move through us, we return to harmony, to trust, to the natural rhythm of all things. So ask yourself, where am I resisting the flow? What am I clinging to that wants to move? What if I let it? Not forced, but allowed. What would shift? What would soften? What would return to motion? Because the river does not stop for us, but it will carry us if we let it. It began with a drizzle, a gentle mist rolling down the mountains and across the rooftops of the small Zen monastery. At first, no one minded. The rain fed the earth, cooled the summer heat, softened the garden soil, but it didn't stop. Not after a day, not after a week. By the third week, it had become a downpour, steady, unrelenting, as if the sky had forgotten how to hold itself together. At the center of the monastery was Master Hoshin, a teacher known less for words than for presence. His robes were often soaked through, but he never complained. Instead, he walked slowly through the halls, a soft smile resting like dew on his lips. The students, however, struggled. Their robes were always damp. Their mats smelled of mildew. Chores doubled in effort wood became too wet to burn. Pathways turned to mud. Silence filled with the patter of fatigue. Frustration grew. "Why won't it stop?" murmured one novice, wringing out his sleeves for the third time that morning. "I can't focus," said another. "My mind feels like it's drowning." Even the most patient began to feel undone. Then, on the 40th day of rain, the youngest student, Ray, broke into tears during meditation. Not from sorrow, but exhaustion. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, looking at Master Hoshin. "I keep hoping it will end, but it never does." Master Hoshin opened his eyes and nodded. "Then let's go," he said gently. "I want to show you something." They walked together in silence, sandals squelching through the garden mud, past the bamboo grove, down a trail barely visible through mist, until they reached a hollowed-out tree old, wide, and dark inside. "Sit here," said Hoshin. Ray hesitated. "It's wet." Hoshin smiled. "Yes, sit anyway," reluctantly. Ray sat inside the hollow, cold bark pressing against his back. The master sat beside him, cross-legged, eyes closed, and for a long while, they said nothing, just listened to the rhythm of rain against wood, to the distant croak of frogs, to the wind pushing droplets through the leaves. Minutes passed, then hours. Ray shifted uncomfortably. Finally, he asked, "What are we doing listening?" said Hoshin. "To what?" "To what doesn't change." Ray frowned. "But everything is changing. All I hear is rain." "Exactly," said Hoshin. "Still, listen again." So Ray closed his eyes, this time with a different kind of attention. At first, only discomfort. His legs ached, his back stiffened, but slowly, something shifted. He stopped trying to escape the wet, stopped hoping the rain would stop, stopped imagining a different now. And in that, letting go, something opened. He heard not just rain, but the space around it, the rhythm behind it, the steadiness within it. It was no longer just a storm. It was a teacher. And in that space, Ray noticed something even deeper. His resistance was louder than the rain. It was his wanting things to be different that hurt most. The rain was just rain, falling, being. It had no malice, no agenda. It didn't punish. It didn't pity. It simply was. And now, so was he. The hours passed like breath. When they finally stood to leave, Ray didn't shake off the water. He didn't flinch when a droplet slid down his spine. He simply bowed to the hollow tree, to the rain, to the moment. Later, when he returned to the meditation hall, nothing had changed. The roof still leaked. The air was still damp, but Ray no longer fought it. And strangely, that made all the difference. The other students noticed. "You seem calmer," they said. "What did Master Hoshin show you?" Ray smiled. "He showed me the silence inside the rain." From that day on, whenever frustration rose in the monastery, someone would whisper, "Maybe we should go sit in the tree, not to escape, but to remember." That suffering often comes not from what is, but from wishing it were otherwise. That peace isn't the absence of storms, it's the ability to sit through them. And listen, there's a reason this story has been passed down in quiet circles of Zen, because it speaks not just of weather, but of life. There are seasons in all of us when the rain doesn't stop, when loss is unrelenting, when change feels cruel, when nothing makes sense, and hope feels far. And in those times, our first instinct is often resistance. We ask, why is this happening? When will it end? How do I fix it? But the deeper practice is not to escape the rain, but to meet it, to sit inside the hollow tree of our own presence and breathe with what is, to hear the rhythm behind the noise, to discover that stillness is not the absence of sound, but the awareness that holds it, and that silence is not always dry or sunny. Sometimes it comes soaked and trembling. Sometimes it looks like surrender. Sometimes it feels like finally stopping the fight against now. We often think that peace will come when the world changes, but maybe peace comes when we stop needing it to, when we let the rain be rain and our hearts be soft enough to hold it. Master Hoshin never spoke of enlightenment. He never lectured about letting go. He simply lived it, one step at a time, one drop at a time. And in that, he taught more than any words could offer. So if you find yourself in a season of endless rain, ask not how to stop it. Ask how to sit with it. Ask what it's here to show you. And then listen, not with your mind, but with your breath, with your body, with your heart. And when you do, you may just find that the thing you feared was not the storm, but your resistance to it, and that beyond that fear is a quiet, wet, beautiful truth. This too is life. This too is sacred. This too shall pass, not because we rush it away, but because we finally stopped holding it back. Loss has many faces. It comes as the silence after a goodbye, the empty chair at dinner, the photo frame that holds more memory than it does glass. Sometimes it comes softly, a slow fading, a gentle release. Other times, it arrives like a storm tearing through the heart, leaving everything changed. No one escapes it. To live is to lose. To love is to grieve. Yet so often, we treat loss like a mistake, as if it shouldn't happen, as if something has gone wrong. But what if loss isn't the opposite of life? What if it's part of it? What if, hidden within every goodbye, is a lesson we've been too busy, too afraid, or too heartbroken to notice? When we sit with loss, not as something to be fixed, but something to be felt, we begin to see more clearly. We see what mattered. We see what was real. And sometimes, we even see ourselves for the first time. Loss strips away what is not essential. It burns off illusion. It brings us face to face with what we cannot control, and in doing so, it invites us into truth, real truth, not the kind written in books, but the kind you feel in your chest when you wake up and they're no longer there. The kind that says, this moment is fragile. This life is not promised. This love, however brief, was real. There's a sacredness in that pain, not because pain is noble, but because it reminds us that we are alive, that we are capable of connection so deep. Its absence aches. And that ache, that's not weakness. It's a sign that we opened our hearts, that we risked, that we cared, and that caring doesn't end with loss. It deepens, it transforms, it becomes part of who we are. There's a story of a woman named Aiko who lost her husband after 40 years of marriage. At first, the grief was unbearable. She said it felt like her bones were hollowed out. Every morning, she reached for a cup he no longer used. Every night, she looked at a pillow no longer slept on, but instead of running from that grief, she sat with it. She lit a candle for him every evening. She wrote him letters. She talked to him in the garden. And slowly, something shifted. The grief didn't go away, but it changed shape. It softened. It began to feel less like drowning and more like being carried. And in that space, Aiko discovered something surprising. She was not alone. Her love for him had not died. It had simply changed form. It became memory. It became presence. It became a deeper awareness of how precious life is. I don't miss him less, she said. I just miss him differently, with more peace and less fear. Loss teaches us that holding on doesn't mean refusing to let go. It means carrying forward. It means weaving memory into movement. It means letting what was beautiful shape what comes next. Too often, we rush grief. We try to patch it up, hide it away, pretend we're over it. But grief is not a wound to close. It's a doorway to tenderness, to empathy, to the deepest parts of our humanity. It teaches us how to slow down, how to be gentle, how to listen not just to others, but to our own broken places. And in that listening, we begin to heal, not by erasing the pain, but by walking through it step by step. Grief invites us to live differently, to cherish what remains, to say what we mean, to hold hands longer, to forgive sooner, to live with the knowledge that nothing lasts, and to love anyway. That is courage. That is presence. That is grace. We may never understand why we lose the ones we love, but we can choose how we honor them, not just in tears, but in how we live, in how we speak their names, in how we show up for others and for ourselves. Because sometimes, the greatest tribute to someone we've lost is not how we mourn them, but how we carry their spirit forward, how we let their memory soften us, guide us, make us more real, more awake, more alive. Loss will visit all of us, sometimes as death, sometimes as endings, sometimes as change we didn't choose. And when it comes, let us not harden, let us not close, let us bow, let us breathe, let us feel, because within that feeling lies the quiet, aching truth that to grieve is to love, and to love fully means opening our arms even when we know that someday we'll have to let go. Death is often treated as the great thief. It sneaks in without warning, takes what we love, and leaves behind silence. But in the eyes of the Buddha, death is not a thief. It is not an interruption. It is part of the flow. It is part of life. To understand death is not to reject life. It is to see life more clearly, more fully, more truthfully. In Buddhist teachings, death is not the enemy. It is a doorway, not to fear, but to freedom. Because the truth is, we die all the time. Every breath is a letting go. Every moment is a death of what just was. Every night, we close our eyes and disappear into sleep, a small death. Every transformation, every shift, every end is a form of death. But also every morning, every breath, every new beginning is life. So, rather than seeing death as a sudden, foreign event, Buddhism teaches us to see it as a continuation, as change, as part of a vast, interconnected cycle. Birth, death, rebirth not always in literal terms, but in the rhythm of existence itself. One thing ends, another begins. Even within us, old thoughts die, old selves dissolve, new ones emerge. We are never static. We are always in motion. In the Buddhist tradition, there is no fixed self, no permanent me that survives untouched. There is only a stream of conditions, a process, a flow of causes and effects, constantly arising and passing away. So death, in this view, is not the vanishing of a self. It is the dissolution of form, the transformation of energy. Just as a wave returns to the ocean, just as a candle flame flickers out and becomes warmth, smoke, memory. To fear death is to misunderstand life. Not because death is painless, it often isn't. Not because it's easy, it rarely is. But because clinging to permanence creates suffering. When we expect things to last, we set ourselves up to break. But when we understand impermanence, we begin to soften. We begin to appreciate what is here, now, without needing it to stay forever. We begin to let go, not out of despair, but out of love. This doesn't mean we don't grieve. Buddhism doesn't ask us to be cold or detached. In fact, it teaches us to feel more fully, to grieve with presence, to love with open hands, to meet loss, not with resistance, but with compassion. There's a story of Kisa Gautami, a woman who lost her only child and was shattered by grief. She went to the Buddha, begging for a way to bring her son back. He told her to find a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. She searched the entire village, but every home had known loss. Every family had a story. And in that search, she realized she was not alone. Her grief was not a curse. It was part of the human experience. And in that realization, she found peace, not because the pain vanished, but because she no longer felt isolated by it. This is one of Buddhism's great gifts. It does not deny suffering. It dignifies it. It does not erase loss. It holds it. Gently, kindly, and it reminds us that the truth of death makes life more precious, not less. Because if we will lose what we love, then let us love fully. Now, if time is short, then let us speak truth. Forgive quickly, laugh freely, sit quietly, listen deeply, be present. This is the path of mindfulness, not just to reduce stress or calm the mind, but to face reality as it is, to meet death not as a distant fear, but as an ever-present teacher, to realize that every moment is a life and a death, the inhale, the exhale, the opening, the closing, the rising, the falling, and that, somehow, it's all okay. It doesn't mean we have to be happy about death. It means we stop pretending we are separate from it. And in that intimacy, something softens. We no longer run. We bow. We breathe. And we live not in denial of death, but in awareness of it. More awake, more grateful, more alive. Because we know this could be the last breath. This could be the last meal. The last conversation. And what a miracle, then, that we are here at all. So when death comes for others, or one day, for us, we can meet it with a heart that has already practiced letting go. We can meet it with reverence, not panic, with surrender, not grasping. And in that space, there is peace, not because life is long, but because it was real, because it was lived, because it was enough. As the Buddha said, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purification. To see impermanence clearly is not to fall into despair. It is to awaken, to the now, to the breath, to the fleeting, beautiful truth of this life, this brief, shining moment we are given. May we live it well. There's a moment in autumn when everything pauses. The wind stills, the air turns crisp, and the last leaf clings to the branch not out of fear, but with a kind of quiet dignity. It knows its time has come. It has turned gold, or crimson, or bronze, no longer what it was, and not yet what it will become. And then, gently, without struggle, it lets go. Not because it failed, not because it gave up, but because it trusted the fall. There's something sacred in that moment, a kind of wisdom that the leaf carries a lesson in how to be light, how to surrender, how to complete a cycle with grace. That is what we are all learning. In some way, to fall when it's time, to loosen our grip, to return to the earth. Not in despair, in peace. We live much of our lives trying to hold on to identities, to stories, to people, places, outcomes. But life is movement. It cannot be pinned down. And the more we cling, the heavier we become. Heavier with fear, heavier with expectation, heavier with things we were never meant to carry forever. But we can learn to be light, like the last leaf of autumn. We can learn to feel the wind and trust where it takes us. To honor what has been, but not demand that it stay. To understand that beauty lies not in permanence, but in presence. The leaf does not mourn its fall. It fulfills its purpose. It nourishes the soil. It becomes part of something larger. So do we. When we let go, not just in death, but in every small moment of surrender, we return to the cycle. We join the dance. We come home. This doesn't mean we don't feel fear. The leaf surely feels the rush of the drop, the uncertainty of the wind, but it lets go anyway. And in doing so, it teaches us letting go is not the end. It is the beginning of becoming something else. In Buddhism, this truth is held gently in the concept of non-attachment, not as detachment, not as indifference, but as freedom from clinging, from needing things to be a certain way to feel whole. The last leaf is whole as it falls. It is not less because it leaves the branch. It is simply complete. We can live this way, with less grasping, less tightness in the chest, less fear of endings. We can meet each moment fully, love what's here, and bow when it's time to say goodbye. We can walk with empty hands, not because we lack, but because we have learned how to hold gently. This is the art of being light. Not light in the sense of frivolous, but light as in unburdened, clear, present, alive. There's a story of an old monk who was asked what enlightenment felt like. He smiled and said, like a leaf drifting to the ground, aware of every swirl of wind. That's the practice. Not avoiding the fall, but meeting it with eyes open, with a heart that does not resist. Because in the end, we all fall. Our youth fades, our bodies change, our loved ones go, and one day, we too will be the last leaf. So the question is not whether we will fall. It is how will we fall? Will we cling and shake, or will we loosen, open, and ride the wind? Will we live so tightly that the end feels like a theft? Or will we live so fully that when it's time, we can say, I was here, I loved, I let go. To live light is not to float above life. It is to sink into it so deeply that even the fall becomes sacred. It is to know that every goodbye contains a hello. Every loss carries a gift. Every ending is another form of beginning. The last leaf does not worry about what comes next. It trusts the season. It knows that even in death, it feeds the roots of new life, that its fall becomes the nourishment for spring. So too, can we? We can let our endings be offerings. Let our lives be compost for kindness. Let our letting go make room for new things to grow. We can stop fearing change, stop trying to outrun impermanence, and start dancing with it, breathing with it, becoming one with it. The more we let go, the more we see. There was never anything to hold in the first place. Just moments, just breath, just the miracle of being here, now, alive. And when the wind comes, we'll be ready. Not because we hardened, but because we softened, because we learned to trust the fall, because we saw, finally, that we are the leaf, and we are also the wind, and the tree, and the soil below, and everything is returning to everything, light, free, whole. Dear one, if you've listened this far, something within you is ready, not to understand more, but to return to a quieter, deeper place inside. We've journeyed through the subtle heaviness of control, the quiet dominance of ego, the exhaustion of chasing certainty. We've stepped into the wisdom of letting go, not giving up, but gently setting down what no longer serves. We've touched the breath, the stillness of meditation, the spaciousness that waits beyond resistance. And finally, we've come face to face with impermanence, not as a tragedy, but as life's most beautiful truth. What makes life so sacred is not that it lasts forever, but that it doesn't. That everything you love and everything you fear will change, shift, end, and begin again. And because of that, every moment matters, every small kindness, every quiet pause, every honest breath. You don't need to wait for everything to make sense. You don't need to perfect yourself before you begin. You are already here, already enough. And this breath, this moment, this heartbeat is where peace begins. Like the last leaf of autumn, you are allowed to let go. You are allowed to trust the season. You are allowed to soften into the unknown, because even as things fall away, something deeper remains. Something that was never born and will never die, the still presence at your center, the witness of all things. This is what the teachings have pointed us toward, softly, again and again, not to escape the world, but to meet it more clearly, not to hold tighter, but to live lighter, not to numb the pain, but to breathe through it awake, honest and whole. So, dear one, if this journey has offered you even one sigh of relief, one softened shoulder, one pause that felt like coming home, then I invite you to let me know. Share your reflection in the comments. Like this video if it resonated. Subscribe to this channel if you wish to walk this path together, step by step. And in our next video, we'll go even deeper into a powerful guided practice, the meditation of setting down, one thing at a time. A journey where you gently release what you carry, layer by layer, until your heart feels clear again, until peace is no longer something you seek, but something you remember. Thank you for being here, for listening with your whole heart. Until next time, may you walk gently, breathe deeply, and live as lightly as the last leaf of autumn.